At my 6-year-old granddaughter's birthday party, my son-in-law held up the wooden box I gave her and said, "You brought this piece of junk to her party? You're a disgrace to this family." My daughter stood beside the live stream lights and forced a smile. "Dad, don't ruin the atmosphere tonight." The whole room burst into laughter. The cameras kept recording, but when my son-in-law slapped the box out of my granddaughter's hands, a hidden secret inside suddenly burst open across the floor. Welcome back to Dad's Calm Revenge. Before we dive in, I need one small favor drop, a comment below, and tell me how are you feeling today in just one word. Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to read. Quick note, this story includes some fictionalized details to emphasize the lesson, but the message at its core is what truly matters. I'm 68 years old, and I'm watching my son-in-law call me a disgrace in front of my 6-year-old granddaughter while 60 guests film it on their phones. The lakeside banquet hall smells like vanilla frosting and expensive cologne. Ring lights glare from 3 corners of the room, bright enough to bleach the color out of the pink balloons tied to every chair. My granddaughter sits at the head table, in a blue dress she didn't pick out, surrounded by unopened presents she never asked for. And I'm standing at the edge of all this staged perfection, holding a scratched wooden box that belonged to my late wife. Harlan Prescott, that's my name. 68 years of working night shifts as a warehouse security guard, raising a daughter on my own, after Rebecca died, doing everything I could to teach Celeste that love doesn't require an audience. The weathered calluses on my hands tell a different story than the manicured fingers adjusting camera angles across the room. Ivy Lockwood is 6 years old today. Bright eyes, small voice, the kind of kid who still believes adults tell the truth. She's perched on a chair too big for her, watching her mother move around the banquet hall like a film director instead of a parent. Celeste Lockwood, 38, my daughter. She's repositioning ring lights with the precision of someone who's measured success in follower counts and engagement rates. Her manicured nails catch the artificial glow as she adjusts the tripod for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. I raised her to value substance over appearance. Somewhere along the way, Brent convinced her the two were the same thing. Brent Lockwood stands near the gift table with his arms crossed and his 41-year-old smugness on full display. Expensive watch, tailored shirt. The kind of man who measures respect in dollar signs and thinks humility is a weakness reserved for people who can't afford better. All right, everyone, we're starting the gift segment. Celeste's voice has that bright false cheer I've heard her practice in the bathroom mirror. Make sure you're recording. 60 guests pull out their phones on cue. This isn't a birthday party. It's content creation. I've been watching it unfold for the past hour, the scripted cake moment, the choreographed surprise entrance, the carefully positioned sponsors' logos on every surface. My granddaughter's 6th birthday monetized and filtered and broadcast to strangers who will never know her name. I step forward with the wooden box, its light in my hands scratched oak with a simple brass latch. Rebecca kept her wedding ring in it for 42 years. When she died 4 years ago, she told me to give it to the person who needs to remember what real inheritance looks like. Grandpa Harlan. Ivy's face lights up when she sees me. Genuine joy. The only authentic thing in this manufactured spectacle. I set the box on the table in front of her. No ribbon, no wrapping paper, just worn wood that's earned its scars honestly. Brent's laugh cuts through the room before Ivy can even touch it. You've got to be kidding me. The guests' phones stay up capturing every second. A scratched piece of junk. Brent's voice rises, performance loud, making sure every camera catches his contempt. This is what you bring to her birthday. This is pathetic. You're a disgrace to this family. 60 witnesses, 60 recordings. I stand perfectly still and say nothing. You need to understand something about Brent Lockwood. He's the kind of man who measures respect in dollar signs. He sees my security guard uniform and my calloused hands, and he thinks he knows exactly what I'm worth. He thinks volume equals power. He thinks public humiliation is the same as winning. He has no idea what he just walked into. Celeste freezes near the main camera, her forced smile flickering. For 1 second, I think she might defend me. Might remember the man who sat up with her through childhood fevers, who worked double shifts to pay for her college, who held her when her mother died. Let's just move on to the next gift, everyone, she says, with a brittle laugh waving her hand dismissively. Sorry about that. Not one word in my defense, not from my own daughter. Vernon Garrett sits near the back of the hall, with the kind of quiet attention most people miss. 61 years old community church pastor, kind eyes that notice what people say when they think no one is listening. He's watching this scene unfold with the careful stillness of someone taking mental notes. I catch his eye for half a second. He nods almost imperceptibly. 60 guests laugh uncomfortably and shift their phones toward the next shiny package. Then Ivy slides off her chair. She's small for 6. The blue dress swallows her thin shoulders. She walks past the pile of expensive toys still wrapped in glittering paper, past her parents who are already queuing up the next performance moment, straight to where I'm standing. She picks up the wooden box with both hands and holds it against her chest like it's fragile, like it matters. "I love Grandpa's gift," she says. Her voice is small but fierce. "I love it." The room goes silent. 60 phones still recording. Celeste's mouth opens but no words come out. Brent's face flushes red. My granddaughter's small hands grip that box like it's the only real thing in a room full of props. I kneel down slowly, my old knees protesting, and I look Ivy in the eyes. "I'm glad you like it, sweetheart." "What's inside?" she whispers. "It's something important," I tell her, "but you have to keep it safe until the right time." She nods solemnly, like I've just entrusted her with a sacred mission. She has no idea this box will decide who gets to raise her. She has no idea that her parents' reaction to this gift just gave me exactly the evidence I needed. She has no idea that in 5 days everything in her carefully constructed world is going to shatter. Brent mutters something under his breath. Celeste touches his arm, whispers urgently. Vernon Garrett continues watching from the back, and I see him pull out his phone not to record the spectacle, but to type something into his notes. I stand up, brush imaginary dust from my pants, and walk toward the exit with the same calm I've carried through 40 years of night shifts. 60 people just watched my son-in-law humiliate me on camera. 60 witnesses saw my daughter stay silent. And not one of them knows what's actually inside this scratched wooden box that my granddaughter is holding like a treasure. They're about to find out what happens when you mistake quiet for weakness. The wooden box sits on my kitchen shelf for 5 days. Nobody asks what's inside. Nobody apologizes for the humiliation. And then, on the morning of August 22nd, my phone explodes with 14 missed calls before sunrise. I'm sitting in the warehouse parking lot after my night shift thermos of black coffee going cold in the cup holder when I finally check the voicemails. My hands are steady. 40 years of security work teaches you that panic is a choice. Brent's voice comes through first tight and controlled, in that way that means he's furious but trying to sound reasonable. "Harlan, we need you to sign some routine paperwork, estate planning stuff. Call me back. Today." Delete. Second message 3 minutes later. "It's urgent. Call me." Delete. Celeste's voice on the 4th message, and I can hear the manufactured sweetness cracking at the edges. "Dad, please. This is important for Ivy's future. We need to talk about the box, about Mom's wishes. Please call me back." Not one word of apology, just fear. I scroll through the text messages. Celeste sent 11 between 4 and 6 a.m. "Dad, pick up. This is serious. We need your signature by end of week. Mom would want you to cooperate." The last one is from Brent. "Don't make this difficult. We know what's in the box." I set the phone down on the passenger seat and take a long drink of cold coffee. The sun is coming up over the industrial park, turning the sky the color of rust. Brent thinks he knows what's in the box. Celeste thinks invoking her mother's name will guilt me into compliance. They have no idea what Rebecca actually wanted. The panic in their voices tells me everything. Whatever legal mechanism Rebecca set up, it's triggered something they can't control without my signature. The birthday party humiliation wasn't just social media content, it was evidence. Proof of exactly what kind of people they are when they think someone is worthless. And now they're realizing that maybe the poor old security guard isn't as powerless as they thought. I should go home, get some sleep. But instead, I drive to the house Rebecca and I shared for 42 years, the one I still live in alone, and I sit at the kitchen table where she used to drink her morning tea. The memory comes back sharp enough to cut. Spring 2020. Rebecca was already dying, though we didn't talk about it in those terms yet. 70 years old and frail in a way that made my chest ache, but her mind was still sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She sat across from me at this same table with her handwritten notes spread out like battle plans. "If Celeste can't love you when you're poor," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "she doesn't deserve to control Ivy's inheritance when you're gone." I stared at the papers. trust documents, moral clauses, conditional triggers. You want me to pretend to be broke for 2 years. I want you to give our daughter a chance to prove she loves you more than money. Rebecca tapped the wooden box sitting between us. The box will tell us everything we need to know. And if she fails the test, then the trust goes to Ivy directly, and Celeste gets nothing but supervised visitation. Rebecca's eyes met mine, and I saw no hesitation. Better our granddaughter is raised by strangers who respect her than by a mother who only sees her as a profitable accessory. That's when she told me about the $2.8 million in trust assets she'd quietly accumulated over 30 years. Investment accounts I didn't know about. Life insurance policies with careful beneficiary designations. Assets that would transfer to Ivy the moment I died unless certain moral conditions were violated first. You have to take the warehouse job, Rebecca said. Sell the nice car, live modestly, make them think we were always poor, make them think the only inheritance is this empty box and whatever trinkets we leave behind. For 2 years, until I'm gone, then another year after that. Give Celeste time to show her true character. She coughed a wet rattling sound that made me reach for her hand. The box has a hidden compartment. Inside is a letter explaining everything. The moral clauses, the witness requirements, the disqualification triggers. When the time is right, you'll open it in front of witnesses who've seen how they treat you. And if she passes the test, I asked though we both knew the answer. Rebecca smiled sadly. Then we were wrong about her, and I'll apologize from beyond the grave. If you've ever loved someone enough to let them think you're worthless just to see if they'll stay, you know what those 2 years cost me. Every condescending comment from Brent about my little security guard job. Every time Celeste canceled dinner plans because she was too busy to visit her poor father. Every birthday and holiday where I watched them spend thousands on strangers online while buying me clearance rack gifts they didn't bother to wrap. Rebecca died in the spring of 2022. Celeste came to the funeral in designer black and cried for the cameras. 3 months later, she threw Ivy's 6th birthday party and let Brent call me a disgrace while 60 people recorded it. My wife had predicted everything. I come back to the present sitting alone in the kitchen where Rebecca used to plan her gardens. The wooden box sits on the shelf above the sink, exactly where she told me to keep it. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Celeste. Dad, please. We can't move forward without your signature. This is about Ivy's security. I set the phone down on the kitchen table next to the wooden box. My fingers trace the scratched surface, find the hidden seam Rebecca showed me before she died. One twist of the mechanism, and they'd see everything. The letter, the moral clauses, the evidence that their inheritance was already gone the moment Brent opened his mouth at that birthday party. But not yet. Let them panic for another few days. Let them show me exactly how far they're willing to go when they think they're losing control of money that was never theirs to begin with. What I didn't know was that Rebecca's best friend had already heard them plotting something far worse than I'd imagined. Rebecca's best friend would tell me about the nursing home plot 2 months later. But on the night of May 3rd alone at midnight in our kitchen, I was finally opening the envelope she'd left in the wooden box's hidden compartment. My wife had been dead for 3 months when I twisted the box's base counterclockwise and felt the false bottom release. The envelope inside had Rebecca's handwriting on the front, "Open when you're ready to see what I saw." I wasn't ready, but Celeste's texts were getting insistent, and I needed to know what Rebecca had set in motion. The letter was dated January 15th, 2022, 6 weeks before she died, written in the hospital between morphine doses, thinking 10 moves ahead. My dearest Harlan, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're wondering if I was right about our daughter. The box will have told you by now. Either Celeste treated it with respect, or she showed her true face in front of witnesses. I'm betting on the latter. I wish I wasn't. I had to stop, had to breathe. 3 pages in Rebecca's precise script laid out the moral clause with surgical precision. The wooden box wasn't just a test. It was a legal tripwire built into trust documents she'd filed 6 months before her death. The box was my grandmother's, she wrote, carried across the ocean in 1907 with nothing but hope and courage. If our daughter can show it, contempt in public, she'll show our granddaughter contempt in private. Material things mean nothing, but respect for heritage, for sacrifice, for the struggles that bought our comfort, that means everything. Rebecca had predicted it all: the public mockery, the social media audience, the calculated cruelty. You'll know within the first year whether she loves Ivy or loves money. The box will tell you everything. If she passes the test, burn this letter, and forgive me for doubting her. If she fails, if she lets her husband humiliate you for giving our granddaughter a family heirloom, then the trust activates immediately. Every dollar goes to Ivy directly. Celeste gets nothing but the chance to prove she can be a mother without financial incentive. I read those pages for an hour. My wife had been 3 months in the grave, and she knew exactly what our daughter would do. She'd designed the test knowing Celeste would fail it. The final paragraph made my throat close. I know this hurts. I know you wanted to believe she was better than this. So did I. But protecting Ivy matters more than protecting Celeste's feelings. You taught me that. Now I'm teaching you to finish what we started. The box isn't empty, my love. It's full of the one thing our daughter never learned to value: the truth. 3 months dead, and Rebecca knew everything. The transition from that midnight revelation to what came 5 weeks later was like watching a chess game my wife had played from beyond the grave. June 10th. Celeste called, asking to meet for coffee. Her voice had that warm, practiced sweetness that meant she wanted something. Just the three of us, Dad. No drama. We want to make things right. The cafe was upscale. White tablecloths, $17 lattes. The kind of place where Brent could feel important, and I was supposed to feel out of place. They were already seated. Celeste hugged me like we were a normal family. Brent shook my hand with that firm grip meant to establish dominance. Nobody mentioned what would become the birthday party disaster 2 months later. We've been thinking about Ivy's future, Celeste said, stirring her oat milk latte. About making sure she's protected. Brent slid a leather folder across the table. Professional printing, embossed letterhead. Standard estate planning stuff. Authorization for managing Ivy's assets. Your signature on page 3, initials on page 7. Takes 2 minutes. I opened it slowly, scanned the dense legal language designed to confuse. Phrases like irrevocable transfer of management authority and unlimited discretion over asset deployment buried in paragraph 5. Then I saw page 3. The signature line had a sample above it. Sign exactly as shown. The instructions read. The sample was my name and my handwriting. Same slant I'd developed over 40 years of signing time cards. Same pressure on the downstrokes. Same slight hook on the final N in Prescott. But I'd never signed that sample. You know that moment when you realize someone's been practicing to steal from you and they're smiling while they do it? Where did this sample come from? I kept my voice level. Celeste glanced at Brent. Just a flicker. Your signature from Mom's estate paperwork. We used it as a reference. Lie. Rebecca's estate had been handled by our attorney. I'd signed exactly 3 documents, all filed with probate court. This signature was different, practiced. Someone had traced my handwriting dozens of times to get the slant and pressure this perfect. I'll need to have my attorney review this, I said, closing the folder. Brent's smile tightened. It's time sensitive. We need to file by end of month. Then you should have brought it to me sooner. I stood up, tucked the folder under my arm. I'll call you when my lawyers reviewed it. Celeste's face went pale. Dad, please, this is important. For Ivy. If it's for Ivy, it can wait for proper legal review. I walked out with the folder containing evidence of premeditated fraud, and neither of them tried to stop me. I stared at that signature sample for 3 hours when I got home. My blood turned to ice water. They'd practiced my handwriting dozens of times to get it this perfect, which meant they'd been planning this long before the birthday party that hadn't even happened yet. Which meant Rebecca's warning about the nursing home wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. 2 weeks later, Lorraine would confirm my worst fear at Rebecca's grave. 2 weeks after discovering the forged signature, I drove to the cemetery to visit Rebecca's grave. Lorraine Harding was waiting by my wife's headstone when I arrived, and I knew before she opened her mouth that Rebecca's worst fear had come true. Lorraine was 72, Rebecca's best friend since grade school, a retired school teacher with steel gray hair and the kind of rigid posture that meant she was carrying bad news. She'd taught 3rd grade for 40 years. She knew how to spot a liar at 20 paces. I need to tell you something I heard at the memorial gathering, she said without preamble. I've been debating whether to say anything for 3 months, but after what Brent did at Ivy's party, I can't keep quiet anymore. The birthday party was still 2 months in the future, but Lorraine was talking about Rebecca's memorial service back in the spring. I waited. I was in the church kitchen cleaning coffee urns. Brent and Celeste were in the storage room next door. They didn't know I was there. Lorraine's hands shook slightly. Brent said they needed you declared incompetent by autumn. Celeste asked if a facility could restrict your visitors. He said the right place could make you unreachable. The cemetery was quiet except for wind in the oak trees. Rebecca's headstone read, "Beloved wife and mother, 1952 to 2022. She'd been dead 3 months when Lorraine overheard that conversation. 3 months, and our daughter was already planning to lock me away. "There's more," Lorraine said. Celeste mentioned they had already looked at 3 facilities. She had brochures. Brent said his cousin works in elder law and could expedite the guardianship paperwork. I kept my voice steady. "Did they say why?" "Something about needing legal authority to manage assets, to sign documents on your behalf." Lorraine met my eyes. "Harlan, they weren't talking about your welfare. They were talking about control." Rebecca had told me to prepare for this exact scenario. 2 years ago, in our kitchen dying, but still sharp, she'd predicted our daughter would try to have me institutionalized if she couldn't get my signature voluntarily. I'd wanted to believe Rebecca was wrong, that grief and illness were making her paranoid. But my wife had known our daughter better than I wanted to believe. "Thank you for telling me," I said to Lorraine. "Rebecca would want me to know." "She told me to watch them." Lorraine's voice cracked. "She made me promise to tell you if they ever tried something like this. I'm sorry it took me so long." I drove home with Lorraine's words echoing in my head. They'd been planning this since the memorial, maybe longer. The forged signature wasn't just fraud, it was Plan A. The nursing home was Plan B. 10 days later, sitting across from Desmond Thornton's mahogany desk, I understood why Rebecca had spent her final months building legal walls instead of saying goodbye. Desmond Thornton was 54, a family trust attorney with 3 decades of experience and Rebecca's chosen legal architect. He had the careful eyes of someone who'd seen every way families tried to steal from each other. His office smelled like leather and old books, the kind of place where serious people made serious plans. "Your wife built this trust like a fortress," Desmond said, spreading documents across his desk. "They can't touch it without your cooperation or a court order declaring you incompetent." "They're working on the court order." I told him about Lorraine's warning, about the facilities, about Brent's cousin. Desmond nodded like he'd expected this. "The trust is structured to flow solely to Ivy. Your daughter and son-in-law can only manage the funds if they demonstrate ongoing respect for family legacy and the trustee, meaning you. Public contempt triggers automatic disqualification. Define public contempt: insults, mockery, or disrespect of the trustee witnessed by third parties, or deliberate damage to sacred family property identified in the trust documents." Desmond tapped a paragraph in the legal text. "Your wife specifically listed her grandmother's wooden box as protected heritage property. The birthday party hadn't happened yet in this timeline, but I could already see how it would play out. Rebecca had designed a trap so elegant it was almost beautiful. The moral clause is enforceable." Desmond continued. "Once triggered, management rights transfer entirely to Ivy, with you as guardian until she reaches maturity. Your daughter gets nothing but supervised visitation rights." How long before they realize what Rebecca did? They might never understand the full mechanism. Most people don't read trust documents carefully. They see dollar signs and assume they can find a way in. Desmond leaned back in his chair. "But there's a hard deadline. December 20th, 2023. All legal structures must be finalized before Ivy turns 7. After that date, the trust becomes irrevocable regardless of what happens. Here's what you need to understand about fortress trusts. They're not built to keep money in. They're built to keep predators out." "What about the guardianship attack?" I asked. Desmond's expression darkened. "That's what I wanted to discuss." He pulled a thin file from his drawer. "I have a standing alert with the county clerk's office for any filings related to our clients. This came across my desk yesterday." He slid the file toward me. "County clerk records. Preliminary guardianship inquiry forms filed under Celeste Lockwood's name. Dated June 8th, 2 days before she'd invited me to that cafe with the forged signature documents." "They filed this before the cafe meeting," I said slowly. "They'd already started the legal assault before trying to get your signature voluntarily." Desmond's voice was grim. "The inquiry asks about expedited competency evaluations. It references your age, your declining mental state, and concerns about your ability to manage assets." "I'm 68 and I work night shifts. My mind is fine." "I know that. But they're building a narrative. The inquiry mentions you gave away a worthless box as a birthday gift, suggesting poor judgment." "The The birthday party was still 6 weeks away when this paperwork was filed. They'd been planning to use my gift as evidence of incompetence before I'd even wrapped it. They'd started this war in secret, but I was about to finish it in public. What I didn't know yet was that Brent's accountant had been documenting everything. 3 weeks after Desmond showed me the guardianship paperwork, the call came from an unknown number at 2:47 in the morning, and the man on the other end sounded like he was calling from inside a confession booth. I was sitting in my truck in the warehouse parking lot, thermos of coffee cooling in the cup holder, when my phone lit up. Unknown caller. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Prescott." The voice was male, hushed, frightened. "This is Wayne Kendrick. I'm Brent's accountant. I need to talk to you, but I can't do this long. I'm in a parking lot and I don't know who's watching." Wayne Kendrick was 43 years old, with dark circles under his eyes. I'd seen him once at a family gathering, keeping to the edges, looking like a man who'd been documenting crimes he couldn't afford to report. Now he was calling me from somewhere dark where no one could see his face. "What's this about?" I kept my voice calm. "I've been doing his books for 3 years. Wayne's words came out in a rush, barely above a whisper. "The numbers don't add up. They never added up. False financial statements, hidden debts, transactions that disappear and reappear under different names. How much does he owe?" "It's 6 figures, maybe more. I've been finding new creditors every month." Wayne's breathing was ragged. "He owes people, bad people. The kind who don't take you to court, they just take you. And he keeps saying your granddaughter's trust is the answer. He keeps saying once he gets control of the assets, everything will be fine." My blood ran cold. What exactly did he say about Ivy's trust? That it's substantial, that you're the only obstacle, that once you're out of the picture, his words not mine, he'll have the authority to restructure the distributions. Wayne paused. "Mr. Prescott, I think he's planning something bad, and I can't be part of it anymore." "What's on the USB drive?" Silence for 3 seconds. "How did you know about—" "You called me at 3 in the morning from a parking lot. You're not doing this without insurance." Wayne let out a shaky breath. "Bank statements, email records, loan applications with forged signatures. 3 years of evidence showing systematic fraud. I've been keeping copies of everything because I knew someday this would blow up, and I didn't want to go down with him." "Where's the drive now?" "Safe, hidden. I'll contact you after the party, after he makes his move. You'll need this to protect yourself." Wayne's voice dropped even lower. "Watch him, Mr. Prescott. He's drowning, and drowning men will pull anyone under to save themselves." The line went dead. I sat in that truck for an hour watching the sun come up over the industrial park, thinking about what Wayne had just told me. Brent wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. And desperate men were dangerous. 2 weeks between that terrified phone call and the moment I walked into my daughter's house and saw what she'd become. August 12th. 5 days before Ivy's 6th birthday party, Celeste had asked me to come early to help with setup. I should have known better. The house was transformed, not into a child's birthday celebration, but into a film production. Ring lights on tripods in 3 corners of the living room, 2 cameras on fixed mounts, a third on a motorized gimbal, white reflector screens positioned to bounce light onto the gift opening area. I stood in the doorway and Celeste didn't even notice I'd arrived. She was adjusting a ring light, checking the angle with her phone camera, while Brent stood behind her with a clipboard. "When your dad gives his gift," Brent was saying, "make sure camera 2 captures your reaction. The contrast will kill. Old man gives garbage-loving daughter tries to hide her embarrassment. That's the money shot." Celeste tilted her head, considering. Should I look embarrassed or sympathetic? Sympathetic, more shareable. Like you feel bad for him, but you're trying to protect Ivy from seeing how pathetic he is. I stepped into the room. They both turned. "Dad," Celeste's voice jumped 3 octaves into false brightness. "You're early. We're just setting up some cameras. You know how it is, everyone wants pictures these days." "Looks like more than pictures," I said. Brent's smile was smooth, practiced. "We're building a family brand, social media sponsorships. Ivy's birthday is great content, wholesome, authentic." I glanced at the wall behind them, a printed timeline taped up like a shooting schedule. 7 o'clock, guest arrival. 7:10, gift segment, dad's box. Camera, 2, tight on Celeste reaction. 7:25, cake ceremony. 7:45, sponsored segment. They weren't throwing Ivy a birthday party, they were producing a show, and I was the villain they'd scripted. You want to know the exact moment I stopped seeing Celeste as my daughter and started seeing her as Rebecca's test subject? It was when I read the script taped to her refrigerator. Gift segment notes, frame dad as well-meaning but out of touch. His poverty shows in his choices. Create sympathy for us as young parents managing family dynamics. Do not let dad's gift derail the positive energy. Redirect quickly to premium sponsors. My own daughter had written production notes about my humiliation. We should get going, Brent said, checking his watch. Still need to set up the dessert table. Thanks for coming early, Harlan. See you at the party. They wanted me gone, needed me gone so they could finish staging their performance. I left without arguing, drove home, sat at my kitchen table staring at the wooden box on the shelf. Rebecca had known. She'd known exactly what kind of people they were. She'd known they'd turn Ivy's childhood into content and my love into comedy. She'd known they'd humiliate me on camera and call it family bonding. And she'd built the perfect trap for exactly this scenario. I stood in that hallway ring lights, reflecting off the metallic birthday banner, still visible in my memory, and made my decision. I would bring the wooden box to Ivy's party. I would let them film every second. I would give Brent exactly the villain performance he'd scripted. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that every camera they pointed at me was a witness I'd need later. Let them humiliate me in 4K. Rebecca had built the trap. I was about to spring it. 5 days before the party, they'd make one final mistake. Their final mistake came on August 12th when they let me see the production schedule taped to the refrigerator. The moment I read those words, frame dad as well-meaning but out of touch, I drove straight to Desmond Thornton's office and signed documents of my own. Now, 5 days later, the wooden box sat on my passenger seat like a loaded weapon as I pulled into my daughter's driveway on the morning of Ivy's 6th birthday. It was 10:20 in the morning. The party didn't start until 6. I'd brought the box early because Ivy had asked to see her present before the guests arrived. At least that's what Celeste's text had said. Brent was waiting at the front door before I'd even turned off the engine. Harlan, good, we need to talk. No greeting, no smile, just urgency wrapped in false calm. Come inside, this won't take long. The dining room table was covered in paperwork, professional printing, legal letterhead, documents spread out like evidence at a crime scene. Celeste appeared from the kitchen, coffee cup in hand, wearing the kind of concerned expression people practice in mirrors. Dad, we know you're busy, but this really can't wait. We need your signature on a few things before the party starts. What things? I stayed standing. Brent gestured to the papers with casual authority. Estate planning, beneficiary updates, routine stuff that should have been handled months ago. Your lawyer probably mentioned it. My lawyer hadn't mentioned anything. My lawyer had spent yesterday afternoon making sure these exact documents would be worthless, even if I did sign them. I picked up the first page, scanned the dense legal language designed to confuse rather than clarify. Found what I was looking for on page 7, paragraph 3. Petitioner requests emergency guardianship authority over Harlan Prescott, age 68, due to demonstrated diminished capacity and inability to manage financial affairs independently. They weren't asking me to sign estate papers, they were asking me to sign away my rights. At your age, these things need to be settled, Celeste said, her voice honey-sweet with rehearsed concern. We're just trying to protect everyone, protect you. From what? Brent's smile tightened. From making decisions that might not be in your best interest. From people who might take advantage of your situation. My situation. Your financial situation. Your living arrangements. Your age. Brent leaned forward, dropping the friendly pretense. You sign these this morning, or we handle this a different way. Your choice, but choose fast. Guests arrive at 6. The threat was clear. Sign now voluntarily, or they'd pursue forced guardianship through the courts. They wanted my cooperation to make it look clean, legal, like I'd agreed to my own imprisonment. I need to read these properly, I said. Have my attorney review them. No time for that. Brent tapped his watch. This is a limited window. Sign now, or the opportunity closes. I set the papers down carefully. I'll think about it. Think fast. Brent's voice went cold. We're doing this today one way or another. I walked out to the backyard before either of them could stop me. The August heat was oppressive, but I needed air that didn't smell like legal fraud. 4 hours between that ambush at the dining table and the moment my granddaughter climbed into my lap, and I spent every minute of it remembering why I was doing this. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was sitting alone on the patio bench watching clouds drift past when I heard small footsteps on the deck. Ivy appeared around the corner in her blue birthday dress, the one they'd bought for the cameras. 6 years old, bright eyes, the kind of trust that breaks your heart because you know how rare it is. "Grandpa?" Her voice was so small. "Why are you out here by yourself?" "Just thinking, sweetheart." She climbed onto my lap without asking the way children do when they're young enough to believe adults want to be climbed on. Her small hands found the wooden box I'd set on the bench beside me. "Is this my present?" "It is." "Can I see what's inside now?" "Later, at the party, when everyone's watching." She traced the scratched wood with her finger, gentle and curious. Then she looked up at me with those bright eyes and said, "Don't be sad, Grandpa. It's my birthday and you're here." My throat closed up. "Mommy said you might have to go away soon," Ivy whispered like she was sharing a secret. "But you won't, right? You'll still come to my school plays and my soccer games." There's a specific kind of rage that comes from watching a child comfort you. Because she's terrified, you're going to disappear from her life. She'd heard them. This 6-year-old child had been listening to her parents plot to take me away from her. And she still loved me, still trusted me, still believed I'd protect her, even though she'd heard them say I was going away. "I'm not going anywhere," I told her. "I promise." "Good." She hugged the wooden box against her chest. "Because I'd miss you too much." I held her there in the afternoon heat, feeling her small heartbeat against my arm. And I understood exactly what Rebecca had known all along. Celeste and Brent didn't see a child when they looked at Ivy. They saw content. They saw access to money. They saw a tool they could use to control me. But Ivy was a person. A small person with feelings and fears, and a voice that whispered secrets about being scared her grandfather would disappear. I would burn down everything I owned before I let them use this child as leverage. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Text from Brent. "We lock it down tonight." I looked down at Ivy still holding the wooden box, her birthday dress already wrinkled from sitting in my lap. He thought he was threatening me. He didn't know I'd signed a different kind of document with Desmond Thornton yesterday, an emergency protective order that froze all access to the trust assets pending resolution of suspected fraud. Every signature Brent tried to force today was completely irrelevant. The money was already beyond his reach. Tonight, in front of 60 witnesses and a dozen cameras, I'd let him try. I'd let him call me a disgrace. I'd let him humiliate me for giving my granddaughter a scratched wooden box. I'd give him all the rope he needed to hang himself. But first I needed to see what Pastor Vernon had overheard. I found Vernon in the banquet hall parking lot at 6:15 minutes before I needed to go inside. He was sitting in his sedan with the windows down, and when he saw me approaching, he got out without a word. "You need to know what I heard," he said quietly. No preamble, no comfort. Just the truth delivered by a man who'd spent his life recognizing evil in polite clothing. The banquet hall was already humming with activity when I arrived at 6:30. The wooden box wrapped in plain brown paper under my arm, Vernon's warning still echoing in my head. Vernon had arrived early to help with setup. He did that for church families, the kind of quiet service nobody noticed until it wasn't there. He'd walked past the event coordinator's office around 6:45. The door was cracked open, and he'd heard everything. Brent's voice clear and cold. "Once he signs, get him to the home immediately. Transport is scheduled for 11 p.m. Celeste's response, nervous but complicit. "What do we tell Ivy? Isbaniziziyuan mawar, yapawand." "That grandpa got sick. She's 6. She'll believe it." Vernon had stood frozen in that hallway, hearing my daughter and son-in-law plan my kidnapping, like they were arranging catering. Transport scheduled, 11 p.m. They had already hired someone to take me. This wasn't a threat or a plan. It was an execution time to the hour. The cameras were already on, Vernon told me in the parking lot. Ring lights set up, 2 cameras running, recording the room even before guests arrived. Whatever they were planning to do tonight, they want it documented. "They want it to go viral," I said. Vernon's jaw tightened. "I can call the police right now. Elder abuse conspiracy, attempted kidnapping." I heard them. "No." I shifted the wooden box to my other arm. "Let them try. Let them record every second. I need witnesses to see exactly who they are." "You'll Harlan?" "Trust me, Vernon." Rebecca knew what she was doing. He'd looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll be watching. If anything goes wrong." "It won't, but thank you." Now inside the banquet hall, I moved through the growing crowd of guests with the brown-wrapped box under my arm. The room smelled like vanilla frosting and fresh flowers, pink balloons tied to every chair, ring lights positioned in 3 corners, just like I'd seen during the setup visit. 2 cameras already mounted and running red recording lights glowing. The 20 minutes between Vernon hearing their plot and me placing that box on the gift table felt like watching dominoes line up in slow motion, each piece exactly where Rebecca had predicted it would fall. 7:05. I approached the gift table loaded with glossy wrapped packages, Disney princesses, glittery bows, bags stuffed with tissue paper, presents that cost more than my weekly paycheck and meant less than the cardboard they came in. I set the brown paper wrapped box down among them, plain, simple, deliberately unremarkable. A woman standing nearby, someone's aunt wearing too much perfume, and the expression of someone who enjoyed other people's drama, turned to me with practiced curiosity. "That's quite different from the other gifts," she said, eyeing the plain wrapping. "What is it?" "Something that belonged to my late wife's grandmother," I said loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "A family piece." "Oh," her tone shifted from curious to pitying. "That's sweet." Another guest, a man in an expensive polo shirt who worked with Brent, glanced over. "Family heirloom, huh? Those are always special." "It's been in Rebecca's family for 3 generations," I said, running my finger along the box's edge, where the hidden seam was almost invisible. "Came across the ocean in 1907, with nothing else but hope and courage. Some things matter more than price tags." The woman nodded politely, already losing interest. The man smiled uncomfortably and turned away. They'd heard me. They'd witnessed me establish this box as a sacred family artifact. That's all I needed. There's an art to building a trap that looks like a gift. You make it so ordinary that predators walk right past the trigger. I traced my finger along that hidden seam one more time, the place where Rebecca had shown me. The compartment twisted open. The key was in my pocket, not a physical key, just the knowledge of how the mechanism worked. 1/4 turn, counterclockwise, gentle pressure on the brass corner, and the false bottom would release. But not yet. Let them see the box. Let them dismiss it. Let them record every second of what came next. I stepped back from the gift table and surveyed the room. 60 guests milling around, most of them. Strangers Brent and Celeste had invited for their social media reach. Vernon stood near the back, his pastor's collar visible, his eyes sharp and watchful. The cameras hummed softly on their mounts, red lights glowing like warning signals. Celeste was adjusting a ring light near the cake table, checking angles on her phone. She saw me looking and waved that bright fake smile she'd perfected for the cameras. I didn't wave back. Then Brent emerged from the coordinator's office, the same office where Vernon had heard him schedule my 11 p.m. transport to the nursing home. He was carrying papers. The guardianship documents from this morning, now in a leather folder, ready to be signed the moment I showed weakness. His eyes scanned the room and landed on the gift table. I watched his expression shift as he registered the plain brown package sitting among the expensive presents. Confusion first, then recognition he'd been there when I'd wrapped it, had seen me carry it in. Then contempt. Pure, undisguised contempt for the poor old man who'd brought his granddaughter a piece of junk when everyone else brought toys worth triple digits. Vernon caught my eye from across the room. A subtle nod. Confirmation that he'd heard everything, that he was ready to be a witness. The cameras were rolling. The guests were gathering, and Brent Lockwood was walking straight toward the wooden box that would destroy him. His hand reached for the brown paper, his face already arranged in that expression of practiced disappointment. He was going to open it early before Ivy even saw it, going to dismiss it publicly, make sure everyone saw what a pathetic gift the old security guard had brought. Rebecca had predicted this exact moment, had designed the trust clause knowing that Brent couldn't resist performing his contempt for an audience. What happened next would be recorded from 6 different angles. Brent's hand reached for the brown paper, then stopped. Celeste appeared at his elbow, whispering something I couldn't hear. She shook her head, slightly gestured toward Ivy. He nodded, stepped back. Let the moment play out the way they'd scripted it. When Ivy carried the brown-wrapped box to me in front of 60 guests, 6 cameras, and her parents' manufactured smiles, I knew the next 3 minutes would decide everything. "Grandpa." Her voice was pure joy. 6 years old in a blue birthday dress, clutching my gift like she'd already decided it was treasure. "Can I open this one first?" "Of course, sweetheart." I knelt down to her level, my old knees protesting. "It's yours." She tore at the brown paper with the enthusiasm only children possess, revealing the scratched oak box underneath. Her small fingers traced the worn wood, fascinated by the texture. "It's pretty," she whispered. Then Brent stepped forward. I'd seen him play to crowds before at family gatherings, church events, anywhere people watched. But this was different. This was performance art designed for maximum viral impact. He positioned himself at an angle where camera 2 had a clear view of his face, projected his voice loud enough for the microphone Celeste had clipped to the floral centerpieces, arranged his expression into contempt, so pure it could be screenshotted and shared across platforms. "What is this?" He picked up the box from Ivy's hands, held it up to the light, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "A scratched piece of junk." The room went quiet. 60 guests stopped mid-conversation. "This is what you bring to my daughter's birthday." Brent's voice carried to every corner of the banquet hall. "To a 6-year-old's party where everyone else brought real gifts. This is pathetic." He turned slightly, giving camera 3 a better angle. "You're a disgrace to this family, Harlan. A disgrace." I watched my son-in-law destroy himself in real time, and the only thing I felt was the cold certainty that Rebecca had predicted this moment down to the camera angles. Every word he spoke was being recorded from 6 different positions, every sneer captured in high definition, every gesture of contempt preserved for exactly the kind of evidence Desmond Thornton would need when Rebecca's moral clause came into play. Celeste stood frozen near the cake table, her practiced expression flickering between embarrassment and calculation. For one heartbeat, I thought she might defend me, might remember the man who'd raised her alone after her mother died, might find some scrap of the daughter I'd loved. Instead, she glanced at camera 2, adjusted her position slightly for better framing, and delivered her line with hollow sympathy. "Dad, maybe we should just... let's open the next gift, everyone." A pause, a sad little smile for the lens. "You know how he is." Not one word in my defense, just camera positioning and audience management. Ivy looked between her parents and me, confusion clouding her bright eyes. "But Grandpa said it's special." "It's garbage, sweetheart." Brent set the box down hard on the gift table. "Just old garbage from a man who doesn't know any better." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others raised their phones higher, making sure they captured every second of the spectacle. This was the content they had come for: drama, disguised as family celebration. Vernon stood near the back wall, his face carefully neutral, but his eyes sharp. I saw his hand slip into his pocket, saw the subtle shift as he angled his phone toward the scene. A 7th camera Brent didn't know about. An independent witness documenting everything. There's a specific sound a room makes when 60 people realize they're watching elder abuse disguised as entertainment. It's not quite a gasp, more like collective breath being held. A woman near the front, someone's mother, grandmother maybe, made a small disapproving sound. The man beside her touched her arm, shook his head slightly. "Don't interfere, not your business. Let the cameras roll." Brent basked in the attention, feeding off the discomfort he'd created. This was his moment, his viral triumph. The poor old father-in-law humiliated the young, successful father, protecting his daughter from inadequate gifts and outdated family members. He'd calculated every angle except one. Ivy walked past her father, past her mother, adjusting ring lights past 60 guests with their phones raised. She picked up the wooden box from the gift table where Brent had dismissively dropped it. Her small hands cradled it carefully, protectively. She looked up at me with those bright 6-year-old eyes that still believed adults told the truth, and love mattered more than money. Then she turned to face the room. "I love Grandpa's gift," she said. Her voice was small but absolutely clear. "I love it." The cameras caught everything. The way she hugged that scratched wooden box against her blue dress. The fierce determination in her expression. The complete rejection of her father's performance in favor of genuine affection. Brent's face twisted. Anger flashed across his features before he could control it. Pure rage at being contradicted by his own daughter, at having his scripted moment derailed by a 6-year-old's honesty. Camera 2 captured that rage in perfect focus. Celeste took a step forward, mouth opening to redirect to salvage the content to get the narrative back on track. But Ivy was already moving toward me, pressing the box against her chest. With both hands, her small voice cutting through the silence a second time. "I love it." 6 cameras recorded her tiny act of defiance. 60 witnesses saw Brent's fury at being upstaged by genuine emotion in his carefully manufactured production. And Pastor Vernon stood in the corner with his phone position perfectly filming the entire scene from a 7th angle Brent didn't know existed. Rebecca's trap had just closed with a 6-year-old's innocence as the trigger. The wooden box, Rebecca's grandmother's heirloom, carried across an ocean in 1907, now publicly shown contempt by the man seeking to control the family trust, sat in Ivy's protective embrace while cameras documented everything. Public mockery of the sacred family artifact, check. Public humiliation of the trustee, check. Multiple independent witnesses recording the moral disqualification in progress, check. Every element Rebecca had built into the trust clause captured in high definition from 7 different angles. But the box had one more secret to reveal. The box had revealed Ivy's fierce love for her grandfather. But the real secret sat inside that scratched oak, waiting for exactly the right trigger to spring it. What happened in the next 60 seconds would be replayed on social media 10,000 times, analyzed frame by frame, but in the moment, it felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. Ivy stood there holding the wooden box against her blue birthday dress, her small voice still echoing in the silent banquet hall. I love it. 2 words that had just destroyed Brent's carefully scripted performance. His face twisted with rage. Not the performative anger he'd shown when mocking the gift. This was real fury at being contradicted by his own 6-year-old daughter, at losing control of his viral content, at having his authority challenged in front of 60 witnesses and 6 cameras. "Give me that," he snarled, reaching for the box. Ivy pulled back confused. "But it's mine." Brent's hand shot out and slapped the wooden box from her small grip. The sound of his palm hitting wood was sharp enough to cut through the room. Ivy's gasp of shock. The collective intake of breath from 60 guests who just watched a grown man violently strike a gift from his daughter's hands. The box flew 3 feet, hit the hardwood floor with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. And something inside it clicked. Time seemed to stretch. I watched the box tumble across the floor, coming to rest near the gift table. Watched a concealed panel on the side spring open with mechanical precision. Watched 2 objects tumble out onto the polished wood. A small USB drive, black plastic unremarkable. A brass key, old-worn, the kind that opened safety deposit boxes. The room froze. Someone gasped. "Did you see that?" There was something hidden inside. Another voice louder. "He just knocked it out of that little girl's hands. Someone's filming this, right? I'll stay ways be coerced. Is brr." 6 cameras had captured every second. The violence of Brent's strike. The box hitting the floor. The hidden compartment springing open like Rebecca had designed it to do. The sound of that box hitting the floor. The click of the mechanism. The collective gasp. That's the sound of a family destroying itself on camera. Brent stared at the USB drive and key like they were live grenades. His face went from rage to shock to something close to panic in under 3 seconds. Celeste saw them too. Her eyes went wide. She took a step forward, then another, moving fast toward the fallen objects. "Don't," Brent started to say, but Celeste was already lunging. And Ivy moved faster. "Don't touch my gift." The scream came from deep in her 6-year-old chest, fierce and absolute. She threw herself between her mother and the USB drive, small body blocking access, with the kind of protective fury only children possess when they know something is deeply wrong. "They don't touch it." Celeste froze mid-reach, one hand, extended shock on her face at being defied by her own daughter. "Ivy, move." Celeste's voice had lost all its practiced sweetness. This was command stripped bare. "Mommy needs to—" "No." Ivy planted her feet, arms spread wide. "It's mine, Grandpa gave it to me." The role reversal was complete, the child protecting the elder from her own parents, defending his gift with more courage than any adult in that room had shown. My 6-year-old granddaughter planted herself between her mother and those 2 small objects, like she was defending a fortress, and I'd never been more terrified or more proud. Brent started moving toward them, his face dark. "Ivy, get out of the way. Step back from my granddaughter." My voice cut through the tension like a blade. Not loud, not angry, just absolutely certain. Now. 60 pairs of eyes turned to me. Vernon's phone was still raised, still recording. The mounted cameras hummed softly, capturing everything. I walked forward slowly, deliberately. Brent and Celeste both stepped back, instinctively creating space. Ivy was trembling when I reached her, trying to be brave, trying to protect me, but she was 6 years old, and her parents had just turned into strangers. I knelt down, feeling my old knees protest, and put one hand gently on her shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart. I've got it." "They tried to take it," she whispered, tears running down her face. "They tried to take your present." "I know, but you protected it. You were so brave." I picked up the USB drive first, small, innocuous, containing whatever Rebecca had recorded in the months before she died. Then the brass key safety deposit box, number 417, at First National Bank, the one Rebecca had opened 6 months before her death without telling Celeste or Brent. The wooden box lay on its side, the hidden compartment still open. Rebecca's engineering had been perfect. The mechanism was triggered by specific impact force and angle, not enough to open from normal handling, but exactly calibrated to spring when thrown or dropped violently. She'd designed it to reveal its contents only through their contempt. I stood slowly, USB drive and key in my palm, ivy pressed against my leg, still shaking. The silence in that banquet hall was absolute. A woman near the front, grandmother, maybe someone who'd seen enough violence in her life to recognize it, spoke into the quiet. That man just assaulted his own child to get it her birthday gift. Her voice was cold with judgment. I saw it. We all saw it. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Phones stayed raised. Camera lights blinked red. Brent's face had gone white. He was finally understanding what had just happened. Not just the public humiliation of the gift, not just the moral clause violation, but documented violence against a child. Assault captured from 7 different angles. Celeste stood frozen, one hand still extended toward where the USB had been, her entire performance shattered. Vernon's phone was steady in his hand, recording angle carefully chosen to show everything. The box had given up its first secret. The wooden container dismissed as junk was actually a security device designed to protect valuable evidence until the right moment, until their own violence triggered the reveal. But what was on that USB drive would be the real revelation, and they were about to find out I'd known about it all along. Rebecca had recorded something in her final months, something important enough to hide, something worth building an entire moral trap around. 2 days later, they'd realized what she'd actually recorded. I slipped the USB drive and brass key into my pocket, while Ivy pressed against my leg, still trembling from watching her father's violence. The guests were already pulling out their phones, sharing the footage. What Rebecca had recorded would wait until I was alone, but I didn't have to wait long to learn what else she'd set in motion. 48 hours after the party, Wayne Kendrick's encrypted email arrived at 3:47 in the morning with a subject line that read, "Everything you need to bury him." I was sitting in my truck in the warehouse parking lot, thermos of coffee steaming in the pre-dawn cold, when my phone lit up. The email was routed through 3 proxy servers, password protected, the kind of security people use when they're afraid of being caught. The password was in a follow-up text. "Rebecca told me you'd know the year she carried the box across the ocean. 1907, her grandmother's journey to America." The files opened like a bomb detonating in slow motion. 3 years of Brent's financial crimes documented with forensic precision. Bank statements showing cash transfers to offshore accounts. Loan applications with forged signatures. My signature practiced until it was nearly perfect. Contracts with backdated modifications. A complete money trail showing $340,000 in gambling debts to creditors whose names made my blood run cold. Wayne's cover email was brief and terrified. "I've documented everything for 3 years. Signature forgeries, false statements, cash flow to offshore accounts. He's $340,000 in the hole to people who don't take IO us. The trust fund is his only way out. He told me last week if he doesn't get access by end of year, he's dead anyway. So he might as well take you down with him." A follow-up text came through while I was still scrolling through the evidence. "The guardianship petition is already drafted. He's filing within 30 days unless you stop him first. I can't be involved publicly, they'll kill me, but you have everything you need. Rebecca knew you would." Rebecca knew. I sat in that truck for an hour reading through Wayne's files, understanding with crystalline clarity what my wife had orchestrated. The USB from the party was the trigger proof of her final wishes, her voice from beyond the grave. But Wayne's files were the weapon. 3 years of evidence collected at Rebecca's request, held in reserve until the exact moment I'd need it. She'd recruited Brent's own accountant to document his crimes, had convinced Wayne to keep copies of everything to watch and wait and record, had built not just a legal trap, but an evidence fortress that would stand up in any court. Rebecca's USB was the bait. Wayne's files were the weapon. She knew I'd need both. I forwarded everything to Desmond Thornton with a single line, "We need to meet today." 2 weeks between Wayne's encrypted confession and Desmond's confirmation, and every day I understood more clearly how Rebecca had been playing chess while the rest of us were learning checkers. September 2nd. Desmond's office smelled like leather and old paper, the kind of place where serious people made serious plans. He'd spent the past 14 days reviewing every document Wayne had sent, cross-referencing it with Rebecca's trust structure, building a case so airtight it could survive nuclear war. The party footage triggered Rebecca's clause perfectly, Desmond said, spreading the documents across his mahogany desk. Public contempt for the family heirloom equals automatic forfeiture of management rights. We have 60 witnesses, 7 camera angles, and documented violence against a minor. They couldn't have disqualified themselves more thoroughly if they had tried. How locked is the trust? Irrevocable. The money flows solely to Ivy. They cannot access or manage the funds without clearing strict behavioral conditions. Public respect for the trustee demonstrated commitment to family legacy, 0 evidence of financial misconduct. Desmond tapped the files from Wayne. They violated every single condition, multiple times, on camera. So it's over. Not even close. Desmond's expression was grim. We have 15 months until the December 20th, 2023 deadline. All legal structures must be finalized before Ivy turns 7. After that date, the trust becomes permanently irrevocable, regardless of what happens. Why did Rebecca build in that deadline? Because she calculated exactly how long it would take for their desperation to force them into criminal actions that would permanently disqualify them. Desmond leaned back in his chair. She didn't just want them to fail the moral test. She wanted them to destroy themselves publicly, completely, with no possible redemption. You know that feeling when you realize someone loved you enough to spend their dying months building walls? You'd need years after they were gone. Rebecca had been in a hospital bed, morphine dripping through an IV, and she'd been calculating legal timelines and behavioral predictions. She'd been setting deadlines and recruiting witnesses and building a fortress designed to protect Ivy from her own parents. They'll fight this, I said, with everything they have. Desmond pulled out a calendar marked with dates in red ink. Late 2023 will be the final battleground. Between now and December 20th, they'll escalate lawsuits, smear campaigns, possibly violence. Rebecca predicted every move. The question is whether you're ready to watch your own daughter destroy herself, trying to steal from her child. I thought about Ivy at the party throwing herself between her mother and the USB drive. Thought about her small voice declaring, "I love it," in defiance of her father's contempt. Thought about Rebecca in that hospital bed, writing letters and designing mechanisms and protecting a granddaughter she'd never lived to see. Turn 7. I've been ready since the day I married Rebecca, I said. Desmond closed the file and met my eyes. Then understand this, they're going to come at you with everything. Character assassination, false accusations. They'll paint you as abusive, unstable, manipulative. They'll try to turn every witness against you. They'll weaponize Ivy's love for you as evidence of your manipulation. Let them try. And when the lawsuits start, and they will start, you can't flinch, can't compromise, can't show mercy just because Celeste is your daughter. Rebecca built this fortress to protect Ivy. You have to be willing to defend it, even if it means destroying your relationship with Celeste permanently. I touched the brass key in my pocket, the one from the party that would unlock safety deposit box 417. Inside that box was Rebecca's final letter, the one she'd told me to read when the war truly began. Late 2023, I said. Final battleground. 15 months from now. They'll do everything in their power to break you before that deadline. What I wasn't ready for was how fast they'd move. 8 days. That's how long it took them to launch the first attack after Desmond's warning about 15 months of war. The first edited video appeared on social media at 9:47 in the morning on September 10th, with 847 views. By noon, it had 340,000 and a headline that read, "Toxic Grandfather Ruins Child's Birthday Party." I was sitting in my truck during a break at the warehouse when Lorraine sent me the link with a single text, "You need to see this." The video opened with me walking into the banquet hall carrying the brown-wrapped box. Clean cut, no context. Just an old man arriving with what looked like a shabby gift. Voiceover from Celeste, sweet and wounded. My father showed up uninvited to my daughter's 6th birthday. Lie, I had the invitation text saved on my phone. The footage jumped to me, presenting the box to Ivy. Another clean cut, removing the moment before the joy on her face when she saw me. Now, it just looked like I was forcing a gift on a confused child. Brent's voice edited to sound protective. We tried to be polite, but he insisted on giving her this object. The box being opened, the scratched wood revealed. Cut to Brent's disgust, but edited to remove his violence, his performance for the cameras, his deliberate cruelty. Now, it looked like reasonable disappointment at a genuinely worthless gift. He brought junk to a 6-year-old's party. Celeste's voiceover continued. We're heartbroken. We're seeking legal help to protect Ivy from this kind of instability. The video ended with a caption in white text over a freeze frame of Ivy crying, family seeking guardianship to protect vulnerable granddaughter, #FamilyFirst, #elder abuse. Every edit was a lie. Every cut removed their violence. Every frame was designed to make me look unstable and them look protective. And every share was evidence of defamation. The comments section filled within hours. That poor baby, she looks terrified. Thank God you're getting him away from her. Elder abuse goes both ways. Sometimes the elder is the abuser. But then something shifted. Around 2 in the afternoon, new comments started appearing. Anyone else notice the jump cuts? That edit at 0:47 removes at least 10 seconds. Why is there no audio when the dad is yelling? A user named TechWatch47 posted a forensic breakdown at 4 p.m., showing every edit point, every removed frame, every manipulation. Within 3 hours, it had more views than the original video. This is coordinated defamation. TechWatch47's analysis concluded, strategic editing to remove context and create false narrative. Notice how the sound cuts out during critical moments. That's not accidental. That's intent to deceive. The tide turned. Comment sections filled with people calling out the manipulation. Shares slowed, then reversed into criticism. But Brent and Celeste kept posting, kept editing, kept lying. And every lie was documented, time-stamped, saved. 8 weeks between their viral lie and Clayton Mercer's parking lot ultimatum. And I watched Brent spiral from confident manipulator to cornered animal in real time. November 3rd, 6:15 in the evening. I was working the warehouse night shift across the street from Brent's office building, one of 3 consulting firms he'd rented space from after his last venture collapsed. I'd been tracking his patterns for 2 months, knew his schedule, knew when he left work, knew he was desperate. Clayton Mercer arrived in a black Mercedes at 6:12. 56 years old with the build of an ex-linebacker and a reputation for collecting debts by any means necessary. I'd looked him up after Wayne's files mentioned him as one of Brent's major creditors. $200,000 invested in a restaurant venture that never opened. I was sitting in my truck with a clear sightline when Clayton intercepted Brent in the parking lot. Pulled out my phone, started recording. Clayton didn't waste time on pleasantries. $200,000 Lockwood. His voice carried in the empty lot. You promised 40% returns in 6 months. That was 2 years ago. Brent's body language screamed panic, hands up backing toward his car. Clayton, I know. I'm working on it. The restaurant deal fell through, but I've got new investors. You've got nothing. Clayton stepped closer, casual menace radiating off him like heat. I've done my research. Failed ventures, gambling debts, maxed credit. You're bleeding money you don't have. I need 60 more days. Brent's voice was desperate now, cornered. There's money coming. The kids' trust once we get guardianship finalized. There it was, on camera, audio clean and clear. I don't care where it comes from. Clayton's voice went cold. December 31st, or I file criminal charges for fraud. And Lockwood criminal charges are the gentle option. Understand? Brent nodded, face pale in the parking lot lights. There's a specific kind of satisfaction in watching a predator get hunted by someone bigger, especially when you're recording every second of it. Clayton got in his Mercedes and drove away. Brent stood there for 5 minutes, phone pressed to his ear voice, too low for me to hear. But his panic was visible from across the street. I saved the recording immediately, encrypted folder. Same place I'd stored Wayne's financial evidence, Vernon's party footage, the unedited master files from Celeste's own cameras that she'd stupidly uploaded to cloud storage I'd gained access to through Ivy's family account. The viral video that started with 847 views had reached 2.3 million shares by the time I finished my shift. But what they didn't know was that every share of their edited lie was evidence of coordinated defamation, documentation of intent to destroy my reputation through deliberate fraud. And Brent had just confessed on camera that he planned to steal my granddaughter's inheritance to pay gambling debts. Explicit verbal admission. The kid's trust. 4 words that would destroy him in family court. Rebecca had predicted desperation. She'd built the legal trap knowing they'd eventually corner themselves. But she hadn't predicted it would be this fast. 8 days from Desmond's warning to the viral smear campaign. 2 months from the party to a recorded confession of intent to defraud a minor. They were moving faster than even Rebecca had calculated, which meant the war she'd prepared for was accelerating. 3 months later, they'd make it official. January 9th, 2023. 3 months after Brent's parking lot confession, they made it official. The summons arrived on January 9th, delivered by a process server who found me coming off night shift, and the phrase, "Petition for Emergency Guardianship and Asset Protection," was highlighted in yellow. 47 pages. I sat in my truck and read every word while the winter sun came up over the warehouse. They'd been preparing this for months, maybe longer. The petition painted me as mentally incompetent, 68 years old, living alone on a warehouse security guard salary, erratic behavior at a child's birthday party, citing the edited viral videos as evidence, refusal to cooperate with family financial planning, giving inappropriate gifts that traumatized a vulnerable 6-year-old. They were asking the court to declare me unfit, to grant them emergency guardianship, to transfer management of Ivy's trust assets immediately to protect her from her unstable grandfather. I called Desmond from the parking lot. They filed, I said. "I know, I've been expecting it." His voice was calm. "Court date is January 14th. Don't worry, we're ready." 5 days between that yellow-highlighted summons and sitting in a courtroom, watching my daughter try to have me declared insane, and I kept thinking about Rebecca's letter. "They'll call you crazy. Let them. Sanity is what we prove, not what we claim." January 14th, 9 in the morning, family courtroom in Columbus with fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly unreal. Celeste sat at the plaintiff's table in a conservative dress makeup, perfect playing the worried daughter. Brent beside her in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent playing the protective son-in-law. Judge Rebecca Hartwell presided from the bench. Early 60s silver hair pulled back the patient-measured demeanor of someone who'd seen every manipulation tactic families could deploy. She had a thick file open in front of her before we even started. Brent's attorney stood first. Mid-40s expensive suit, the kind of lawyer you hire when you're trying to steamroll opposition with paperwork. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of protecting a vulnerable minor from an unstable guardian. Mr. Prescott is 68 years old, living alone on a warehouse security guard salary, and exhibited erratic, inappropriate behavior at his granddaughter's 6th birthday party. He played clips from the edited viral video, me arriving with the brown-wrapped box, the scratched wood revealed, Celeste's wounded voiceover about trauma and instability. This behavior indicates cognitive decline. We're requesting immediate psychiatric evaluation and emergency guardianship pending results. The child's trust assets must be protected from impulsive, incompetent management." Desmond stood slowly, deliberately. He'd told me in the parking lot to stay calm, no matter what they said, to let him handle it. That garbage, Desmond said, his voice sharp enough to cut glass, contained a USB drive with Mrs. Prescott's final wishes and a key to a trust worth $2.8 million. My client's competence isn't in question, their motives are. He presented the unedited footage, all 7 camera angles from the party. Brent's violence, his performative contempt, the hidden compartment springing open, Ivy's fierce defense of the gift. Then he presented Wayne's files, 3 years of documented financial fraud, forged signatures, false statements. The parking lot confession where Brent explicitly stated he intended to take the kid's trust fund to pay gambling debts. Mrs. Prescott designed the trust specifically to protect her granddaughter from financial predators. The petitioners aren't seeking guardianship. They're seeking access to assets they have no legal right to touch. Brent's attorney objected. "This is character assassination, Your Honor. Our petition concerns Mr. Prescott's mental competence, not unrelated financial matters." Unrelated. Desmond's voice was ice. The petition was drafted in July of 2022, 2 months before the birthday party they were citing as evidence. Page 33 references a pre-scheduled psychiatric evaluator. Page 41 contains template guardianship orders ready to be signed. This wasn't a reaction to concerning behavior. This was a premeditated legal ambush. Silence in the courtroom. Judge Hartwell's expression didn't change, but I saw her eyes flick to specific pages in the file. You know what it feels like to sit 3 feet from your own child, while her lawyer reads a psychiatric profile of you that makes you sound dangerous. It feels like watching someone you raised murder you with paperwork. Celeste wouldn't meet my eyes, kept her gaze fixed on the table, hands folded, playing her role. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Arguments, counter-arguments, evidence presented and contested. Brent's attorney pushed for emergency guardianship. Desmond pushed back with Rebecca's trust documentation and evidence of fraud. Finally, Judge Hartwell spoke. This court will not be rushed. Her voice was firm, final. Evaluation is scheduled for March 15, 2023. Mr. Prescott will undergo competency assessment by a court-appointed psychiatrist. Until results are reviewed, current trust arrangements remain in place. No emergency guardianship is granted at this time. Brent's face went white. His attorney started to object. The arrangements Mrs. Prescott put in place before her death are legally sound, Judge Hartwell continued. Any changes require substantial evidence of incompetence or malfeasance. This court sees neither at present. We reconvene after the March evaluation. Gavel down. We'd won the battle, but the war was still scheduled for March. Outside the courthouse, Desmond pulled me aside, voice low. The judge referenced sealed filings, he said. Did you catch it? No. He showed me his phone. Court filing reference RE. Lockwood versus Prescott cross petition for fraud investigation, sealed pending evaluation. Is that you filed fraud charges? I asked. 2 weeks ago, before they filed for guardianship. Wayne's evidenced the parking lot confession documentation of the hidden debts. I presented everything to the prosecutor's office. Desmond's smile was thin and sharp. The judge knows she can't act on it, yet needs the competency evaluation to be clean, unbiased. But she knows. They'd walked into court thinking they were attacking. They didn't know Desmond had already filed countercharges. Didn't know the psychiatric evaluation wasn't just testing my competence, it was buying time for a criminal investigation they didn't see coming. How long until they find out? I asked. Maybe never if we're lucky. The investigation is sealed. They'll know something's wrong when the subpoenas start arriving. Desmond closed his phone. March 15th. Pass the evaluation and everything Rebecca built becomes permanent. Fail, and we fight for years. I'll pass. I know you will, but first Rebecca's final clause needs to activate. I looked at him. What clause? The one that makes the birthday party footage legally enforceable. Lorraine's delivering the certified documents to my office next week. Once processed, the moral disqualification becomes permanent record. They lose all rights the moment the paperwork clears. But first, Rebecca's final clause would activate. 2 weeks after the courtroom battle, Rebecca's final move locked into place. Lorraine Harding arrived at my door on March 1st with a manila envelope sealed with red wax, and I knew before she spoke that Rebecca's endgame was about to become legal fact. She had me hold this for 3 years, Lorraine said, stepping into my kitchen. Made me promise to deliver it exactly 90 days before the deadline. Not earlier, not later. March 1st, 2023. The envelope contained a single document, certified, notarized, backdated to February 12, 2020. Rebecca's conditional clause, the moral disqualification trigger she'd built into the trust. Any person who publicly insults or shows contempt for the family heirloom box or the trustee in front of witnesses automatically forfeits all rights to manage the beneficiary's assets. I read it 3 times. The language was surgical, specific, enforceable. Eleanor had this notarized 3 years ago, Lorraine said, using Rebecca's middle name the way old friends did. The clause was active from the moment she signed it, not from when they triggered it. The birthday party, I said. August 17, 2022, 7:10 p.m. The moment Brent called you a disgrace on camera and slapped that box from Ivy's hands, he lost every legal right to touch her inheritance. It's time-stamped evidence, 6 cameras, 60 witnesses. Rebecca had written the trap in 2020. They'd sprung it in 2022, and it just became enforceable evidence in 2023. She'd planned 3 years ahead. They've had no legal standing for 8 months, Lorraine continued. Every petition, every lawsuit, every claim they've made since that party legally void. They just don't know it yet. When do they find out? When Desmond files this with the court next week. Then it becomes permanent public record, irreversible. I sat at the kitchen table where Rebecca had once sat dying, but still calculating, and I understood the full scope of what she'd built. Not just a trust, not just a moral test, but a time bomb that would detonate exactly when it needed to. Lorraine left the certified document on the table. She loved you enough to spend her last months building walls. Now you just have to hold the line until December 20th. 7 weeks between Rebecca's claws locking into place and Wayne walking into that diner, and every day I felt the net tightening around Brent like a noose he'd tied himself. April 22nd, 7:30 in the evening. A roadside diner 40 miles outside Columbus. The kind of place truckers stopped for coffee and nobody asked questions. Wayne had chosen it specifically. Off the main roads, no security cameras. Cash only. He arrived 10 minutes late, 3 thick folders under his arm and a flash drive in his pocket. Desmond was already there sitting across from me in a corner booth with sight lines to both exits. Wayne looked like he'd aged 5 years in the 6 months since his parking lot phone call. Dark circles, trembling hands, the haunted expression of someone who'd been living with criminal knowledge and no way to safely unload it. He slid the folders across the table first. Bank statements, 2020 through 2023. Every false entry, every forged authorization, every dollar that disappeared into offshore accounts. Desmond opened the first folder, scanned the pages with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen financial fraud before. This is comprehensive. 3 years of documentation, Wayne said. Signature forgery practice sheets. He practiced your handwriting for months before attempting the cafe documents. Embezzlement timeline showing the gambling losses, contracts with backdated modifications, everything. How much total, I asked. $340,000 in gambling debts, another $200 in failed business ventures. He's been covering losses with fraud since 2020. Then Wayne pulled out the flash drive. Before I tell you what Wayne recorded on that drive, I need to ask, do you think this evidence will be enough to stop them, or is it already too late? Comment A, if you think this ends with justice. B, if you think they'll find a way out, and tell me why in one sentence. Please note what follows includes recreated details for narrative purposes, but the lesson is what I hope stays with you. I've been recording every single interaction he's had with me since November. Wayne said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Every conversation we had in his office, every illegal order he gave me, and every admission of fraud he made directly to my face. It's all encrypted on this drive. 6 months of it. Wayne's hands shook as he pushed the flash drive toward me. Time-stamped, unedited, admissible in any court. He talked about forging your signature to access the trust, about having you declared incompetent and committed, about using Ivy's inheritance to pay his debts. He said all of it, on tape, multiple times. You want to know what justice sounds like? It sounds like a terrified accountant pushing a flash drive across a diner table and whispering, "I got everything." Why did you do this? I asked. Wayne met my eyes. Because I have a daughter. She's 8. And if someone was planning to steal from her to institutionalize her grandfather to get at her money, I'd want someone to stop them. He paused. Rebecca asked me to watch him 3 years ago. Said she needed documentation if things went wrong. I didn't understand then, but after the party, after seeing what they did to Ivy on camera, I understood. Rebecca had recruited him years before she died, had asked him to document, to watch, to record. The password, Wayne said. It's encrypted with Rebecca's birth date. I picked up the flash drive. This tiny piece of plastic held enough evidence to send Brent to prison for a decade, maybe more. Rebecca's moral clause had stripped their legal rights 8 months ago. Wayne's wire had documented 6 months of criminal confessions. And in 3 weeks, a state investigator would walk into that evidence like a bomb going off in their lives. When does the investigation officially start? Desmond asked. May 15th, Wayne said. Prosecutor's office opens the sealed case. Subpoenas start flying. Brent won't know what hit him until federal agents show up at his door. I held the flash drive in my palm. 6 months of audio, every fraud, every forgery, every plan. Rebecca had given me the moral clause. Wayne had given me the criminal evidence. Together, they were a guillotine. But first I had to see what Rebecca recorded on the original USB from the party. 3 weeks after Wayne handed me the encrypted flash drive, Desmond and I sat in his law office with Rebecca's original USB from the birthday party box. Air-gapped computer, no internet connection, maximum security. When Desmond entered Rebecca's birth date as the password and the USB unlocked, the first file that opened was a video of my wife recorded 3 weeks before she died, and she was smiling. She looked frail. Hospital gown, IV stand visible in the background, but her eyes were sharp and her voice was steady. Harlan. She said to the camera, "If you're watching this, Celeste failed the test. The box was insulted. The clause is triggered. And I want you to know that I'm not disappointed, I'm relieved. Because now you can protect our granddaughter with everything I've left you." Desmond paused the video, looked at me. I nodded for him to continue. Rebecca spent 15 minutes explaining the moral clause in her own words, how she'd designed it specifically to catch public contempt, how she'd predicted Brent would try to institutionalize me, how she knew Celeste would enable it rather than stop it. "They'll call you incompetent," she said in the video. "They'll paint you as unstable, dangerous, unfit. Let them. Sanity is what we prove, not what we claim. And you'll have proof. Everything you need is on this drive." Desmond opened the additional files. Email screenshots going back 18 months. Brent discussing forgery plans with an offshore contact. Transaction records showing the gambling debt trail casino after casino. Loss after loss, $340,000 down a hole he thought he could fill with Ivy's inheritance. Audio clips. Conversations recorded through methods I didn't ask about and Desmond didn't explain. Brent and Celeste discussing how to force me into a care facility. Which lawyers specialized in expedited guardianship. Which facilities would accept emergency placements. Rebecca had been documenting their conspiracy before she died. "This isn't evidence," Desmond said, scrolling through the files. "It's a prosecution roadmap. She built the entire case." The final video file was dated 3 weeks before Rebecca's death. She looked directly into the camera. "By the time you decrypt this, they've already triggered the trap. You're probably scared, probably angry, maybe grieving that our daughter became this person. But Harlan, you married a woman who loved you enough to build walls from her deathbed. Use them. Protect Ivy. I love you." She was smiling when she said it, dying but smiling, because she knew I'd win. 8 weeks between hearing Rebecca's voice from beyond the grave and watching a state investigator confirm she'd built a criminal case before she died. July 2nd, 6:45 in the evening. I was leaving my warehouse shift when a woman in a gray suit approached the gates with credentials and a case file already 3 inches thick. "Mr. Prescott, I'm Nadine Whitfield, State Financial Crimes Investigator." She was 47, 15 years, specializing in elder fraud and family theft, with the methodical intensity of someone who'd seen every scam families run on each other. "I've opened a formal investigation into Brent Lockwood for identity fraud, financial elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit theft from a minor. Your cooperation is voluntary but crucial." She'd already interviewed Wayne, already reviewed Vernon's party footage, already entered the forged signature samples and banking records into evidence. "We have the wire recordings," Nadine continued. "The party footage, the forged signatures, the documented institutionalization plot. This case is solid, but we need to move fast. Your attorney mentioned a December 20th deadline." "That's when the trust structure locks permanently," I said. "After that date, nothing can change it. Ivy's inheritance is protected forever." "Can you build the case by then?" I asked. Nadine's smile was thin and sharp. "Mr. Prescott, we could build this case in 6 weeks. The evidence your wife compiled is the most comprehensive pre-death fraud documentation I've ever seen. She did half our job before we even knew there was a crime. Official validation, the state taking Rebecca's roadmap and turning it into prosecution. Charges will be filed in October," Nadine said. "Arraignment before Thanksgiving. Trial date to be determined, but the fraud is undeniable." 2 months later, Celeste made her final play. August 30th. 3:15 in the afternoon, Ivy's school parking lot. I was waiting to pick up my granddaughter for our weekly supervised visit when Celeste appeared at my truck window. "Dad, please, can we talk?" I turned on my phone's voice recorder. Ohio is one-party consent. She didn't need to know she was being documented. "What do you want, Celeste?" She'd rehearsed this. I could see it in the way she positioned herself, the practiced tears, the calculated vulnerability. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for things to go this far. Brent made mistakes, but I'm still Ivy's mother. Can we please talk about moving forward? My brand is damaged. The social media fallout, people are sending death threats. Can't we find a way to fix this? You know what it's like to watch your own daughter perform remorse like a script reading. It's like watching someone try to sell you something you already own. Are you apologizing for calling me incompetent in court? I asked voice level and cold, or for planning to institutionalize me, or for trying to steal from your daughter. I didn't know all of Brent's, she paused, recalculating, financial issues. If I'd known how deep he was in debt, I never would have. You knew enough. I didn't know about the gambling, the offshore accounts. All of that came out later. You signed the guardianship petition in July 2022, 2 months before the party. You knew then. Her face shifted. The performance cracked. Things were complicated. From now on, I said, legal counsel and witnesses only. You want to see Ivy? You go through the court-ordered supervised visitation. You want to discuss the trust, you talk to Desmond. You do not approach me alone, ever. Are we clear? Celeste stared at me, then nodded, got back in her car, and drove away. I stopped the recording. 23 minutes of conversation. 3 accidental admissions of prior knowledge. 1 explicit statement about Brent's financial issues she'd just claimed not to know about in her January court testimony. I forwarded the audio file to Nadine and Desmond with a single line. She just contradicted her sworn testimony. In 7 weeks, they'd try one final desperate play. Stage some public reconciliation event. Try to force a signature on camera. Try to salvage something from the wreckage. But the trap was already closed. Rebecca had seen to that before she took her last breath. October would bring their last stand. October arrived with the weight of inevitability. The invitation to the family reconciliation celebration arrived on October 12th, printed on church letterhead with Vernon's signature at the bottom, and the date, October 18th, was exactly 63 days before the December 20th trust deadline. Not 65, not 60, exactly 63. They'd calculated it. This wasn't spontaneous healing. This was their final deadline play. I called Vernon immediately. Did you authorize this event? I asked. Brent requested use of the hall for a family gathering, Vernon said carefully. I agreed to provide space, but Harlan, you should know they've been setting up for 3 days. Professional equipment. This isn't a family dinner. I'm coming to see it. Come now, before they finish. October 14th, 3 in the afternoon. The Grace Community Church Hall looked like a television studio. Professional cameras on tripods positioned at 3 angles. Lighting rigs with barn doors and diffusers. A small stage area with 2 chairs and a table. Wireless microphones clipped to the table edge. And backstage taped to the wall, a printed schedule. 7 p.m., guest arrival, 7:15 p.m., opening remarks. Celeste 7:30 p.m., family statement of unity and asset management agreement. Signing 7:45 p.m., celebration reception. They'd literally scheduled my surrender. Vernon stood beside me, reading the same schedule. This isn't reconciliation. It's a production designed to force your hand on film. Have you seen the document? No, but Brent mentioned something about voluntary family asset coordination during setup. I took photos of everything. The camera positions, the lighting setup, the schedule, the professional videographer's business cards sitting on the soundboard. In 63 days until the deadline, I said, they're out of time, out of options, and turning your church into their last desperate stage. Vernon's face was grim. What do you need from me? Be here Wednesday night. Watch everything. Record what you can. I'll be here. 4 days between seeing that staged church hall and standing in this hallway with Brent's desperation thick enough to choke on, and I knew Rebecca had predicted this exact moment. October 18th, 7 p.m. 30 minutes before the reconciliation event was scheduled to begin. I'd arrived early, deliberately parking in the back lot, entering through the side door Vernon had left unlocked for me. Brent was waiting in the back hallway, not in the main hall greeting guests, not with Celeste adjusting cameras, alone in a dim hallway with a leather folder in his hands and the kind of cornered animal energy that makes smart people leave the room. We need to talk, he said, now, before this thing starts. I thought the whole point was talking in front of everyone. This is preliminary, legal formality. He opened the folder, document inside, professional printing, asset management agreement, standard language. You sign here, I countersign, we present it to the family as a done deal. Why not sign it out there in front of witnesses like the schedule says? Oon spies unorst, nan skarp getik deksel. His jaw tightened. This needs to be handled privately first. Legal protocol. Legal protocol requires notarization and 3 witnesses. I don't see a notary. Brent's eyes flashed. Sign this now here, or I release documents proving you're mentally unfit. Your face on every screen by morning, psychiatric evaluations, doctor's notes, evidence of declining capacity. Celeste appeared at the end of the hallway heels, clicking on tile. Her face was arranged in rehearsed panic. "Dad, please," she said, moving closer. "Just sign it. For Ivy, for family. We can fix everything if you just cooperate with this one simple—" "But show me the notary," I said. Brent's face went red. "There's no fucking notary because we don't need—" "Then it's not a legal document. It's theater. There's a specific look a man gets when he's cornered, broke, and facing prison, and Brent Lockwood wore it like a mask that was starting to crack. Clayton Mercer is in the parking lot," Brent said, voice dropping to something close to a threat. "He's waiting for an answer about the money I owe him. If you don't sign this, if you don't give me access to manage the trust assets, I'm dead by the end of the month. Literally dead. Do you understand? All of. That's not my problem. It becomes Celeste's problem. It becomes Ivy's problem when they come after her mother for conspiracy." Celeste grabbed his arm. "Brent, stop!" "No." He yanked free, advancing on me. "He needs to understand what's at stake. The criminal investigation, the fraud charges, the wire recordings Wayne provided, all of it goes away if we present a united family front. Voluntary asset management. Grandfather willingly transitioning control to competent younger generation. The prosecutor sees family harmony case, gets deprioritized. So that was the play. Use the reconciliation as a proof that I'd voluntarily surrendered control. Present it to Nadine as evidence the family disputes were resolved. Make the investigation look like interfering with private family matters." "No," he said. Brent's hand shot to my collar, gripping fabric. Celeste gasped. "You selfish old—" I didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked him in the eyes. "We signed this in front of everyone out there," I said, voice calm as winter ice. "Cameras rolling, witnesses present, Vernon watching. Every guest you invited sees exactly what document you're asking me to sign. Or we don't sign at all." Brent's face went white. His grip loosened. Celeste whispered, "Just agree, we'll fix it later." But Brent's eyes were locked on mine, calculating whether I knew the document he was holding wasn't what he'd claimed. He was wondering if I'd already reviewed the real asset management agreement with Desmond, wondering if I knew it required notarization and 3 witness signatures, none of which he'd arranged. I knew, because Desmond had shown me the legitimate version weeks ago, and this wasn't it. Brent had brought a fake to a hallway ambush expecting me to sign in the shadows. A document that would photograph well but hold no legal weight, something to wave at the prosecutor as proof of voluntary cooperation. Instead, I was about to drag him onto that stage in front of 60 witnesses and every camera he'd positioned to capture my surrender. "Let go of me," I said quietly. He did. Stepped back. Celeste was pale. "We go out there together," I said. "You announce the reconciliation. I agree to review the asset management proposal, and we do it all in front of everyone you invited. Deal?" Brent swallowed hard, nodded. What he didn't know was who else was waiting in that church hall. When we walked into the main hall, I saw them immediately. Vernon in the 3rd row, Wayne near the back, nervous but present, Desmond in the 2nd row with his briefcase. The witnesses Brent didn't know I'd invited. The wooden box sat on the small stage table under the church lights, the same scratched surface Brent had called garbage 14 months earlier, and 60 people leaned forward in their seats, waiting for me to explain why I'd brought it back. Brent stood beside me, rigid with panic barely contained. Celeste was in the front row, makeup perfect, smile frozen. "Thank you all for coming," I said into the microphone. "Brent asked me here tonight to discuss family reconciliation and asset management. Before we do that, I'd like to call some witnesses to help explain the situation." Brent's head snapped toward me. "What? Pastor Vernon Garrett, would you please join us?" Vernon stood, walked to the stage with the steady calm of someone who'd prepared for this moment. Brent's face went white. "Pastor Vernon," I said. "You were present at my granddaughter's 6th birthday party on August 17th, 2022. Can you tell everyone what you observed? Ospi, eborinde bosmaor." Vernon's voice was clear, steady. "I heard Mr. Lockwood call you a disgrace. I quote, 'You're a disgrace to this family.' I also overheard a conversation through the office door where Mr. Lockwood discussed institutionalizing you. He said, once he signs, get him to the home immediately. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Brent started to speak, but I raised my hand. Wayne Kendrick, please. Wayne stood from the back row, walked forward like a man testifying at his own trial, exhausted, relieved, done carrying secrets. Mr. Kendrick, I said, you were Mr. Lockwood's accountant for 3 years. Can you authenticate the financial records you provided to state investigators? Yes. Wayne's voice shook but held. I documented systematic fraud, forged signatures practicing Mr. Prescott's handwriting, false bank statements, $340,000 in gambling debts hidden from creditors and family, all time-stamped, all authenticated. I also recorded 6 months of conversations where Mr. Lockwood explicitly discussed plans to forge signatures and steal from his daughter's trust fund. Someone in the crowd was recording on their phone. Brent's own cameras captured everything. A Desmond Thornton, I said. My attorney. Desmond stood, walked to the stage with his briefcase, opened it, pulled out a single document. Mrs. Rebecca Prescott structured this trust with specific legal protections. Desmond said, his voice carrying the precision of someone who'd practiced this moment, including a moral clause. Anyone who publicly insults or shows contempt for the trustee or the designated family heirloom, he gestured to the wooden box, automatically and permanently forfeits all rights to manage the beneficiary's assets. No appeals, no exceptions. The clause was active from the day Mrs. Prescott signed it in February 2020. 10 minutes between Vernon's first word and me opening that box, and I watched Rebecca's 3-year trap close with the precision of a Swiss watch. I placed my hand on the wooden box, found the hidden seam Rebecca had shown me, twisted the base a quarter turn, counterclockwise. Click, the false bottom released. The secret compartment sprang open. Inside a single envelope, Rebecca's handwriting on the front, to be read when the trap closes. I opened it, pulled out the letter, her words, her voice from beyond the grave. My dearest Harlan, I read aloud. This box belonged to my grandmother. It crossed an ocean in 1907 carrying nothing but hope. It is sacred to our family. Anyone who treats it or the trustee protecting our granddaughter with public contempt loses all rights to Ivy's inheritance, forever. The room was absolutely silent. I predicted they would fail this test. I predicted Brent would call it garbage. I predicted Celeste would stand by and say nothing. I designed the clause knowing their greed would destroy them. By the time you read this, Harlan, you've already won. Protect our granddaughter. I love you. You know what justice looks like? It looks like reading your dead wife's handwriting aloud, while the people who tried to steal from your granddaughter realize they've already lost. August 17th, 2022. I said, looking directly at Brent, you called this box junk, called me a disgrace, slapped it from a 6-year-old's hands, all on camera. The clause triggered that night. You've spent 14 months fighting for control you already lost. Brent's breathing was ragged. You manipulated... Rebecca knew you'd destroy yourself, I said. I just had to watch. The trust is locked, permanently, to Ivy. You have no legal standing, no management rights, no access. The December 20th deadline exists to finalize paperwork you'll never sign because you have no authority to sign it. Desmond held up another document. The moral clause activation was certified and filed with the court on March 8, 2023. Everything you've done since the birthday party, every lawsuit, every petition, every claim, legally void. Celeste made a small sound. Horror, recognition. Brent stared at the wooden box, at Rebecca's letter, at the 60 witnesses watching him realize he'd lost everything. Then he lunged. Not toward me, toward the box. His hands grabbed for it, knocking it toward the edge of the table. That money was supposed to fix everything. He screamed loud enough for the back row to hear. It's mine! It's mine! 6 cameras captured it. 60 witnesses heard it. An explicit confession of intent to steal from his own daughter, screamed in a church at a reconciliation event he'd staged. Celeste grabbed his arm. Brent, stop! He shook her off, face twisted with rage. I earned that money, 3 years of dealing with that old man, 3 years of playing happy family, and she rigged it, so I get nothing. Vernon stepped between us, firm, protective. And Brent saw it. Saw Vernon's phone recording. Saw the cameras he'd positioned to capture my surrender, capturing his confession instead. saw 60 faces staring at him with shock and disgust. His expression changed from rage to horror in the span of a heartbeat. The back doors of the church opened. Clayton Mercer walked through. Clayton Mercer walked down the center aisle. Behind him, 3 more men in business suits, creditors, investors. People Brent owed money he'd never be able to pay. Brent saw them and ran. The red and blue lights arrived before he made it 10 feet from the church doors, 3 unmarked sedans forming a wall across the parking lot exit. And I recognized Clayton's silver BMW parked at an angle that said, "This wasn't a coincidence." I followed the crowd outside, watched from the church steps as Brent tried to push past Clayton in the parking lot. "Not so fast, Lockwood," Clayton's voice carried in the cold October air. "You just confessed to theft on camera, in front of 60 witnesses. You think I'm letting you walk away from $200,000? I can't explain." "You already explained," Clayton gestured to the other men. "We've all been comparing notes for 6 weeks, 4 defrauded investors, $437,000 in total claims. And we've been coordinating with federal investigators since September." One of the sedan doors opened. A woman in a gray suit stepped out, badge clipped to her belt. "Brent Lockwood," she said, voice official and final. "I'm Agent Sarah Mitchell, Securities and Exchange Commission. We have warrants for your arrest on charges of securities, fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft from a minor." Brent's face went white. "You can't. This is a church." "The investigation has been active for 6 weeks," Agent Mitchell continued. "Your public confession tonight merely confirms what we already documented. You have the right to remain silent." She continued with Miranda rights while Clayton stood with his arms crossed, watching with the satisfaction of a hunter who'd finally cornered his prey. Rebecca had predicted desperation. She hadn't predicted federal involvement, but she'd built the trap strong enough to hold whatever walked into it. The church bells tolled 8 p.m., the same bells that had rung at Rebecca's funeral 4 years ago. Same pitch, same mournful rhythm. For 5 seconds, the parking lot chaos faded, and I remembered her final words to me in the hospital. "Protect what matters even if it costs you everything." Celeste appeared at my elbow, Ivy's small hand gripped tightly in hers. "Dad, please!" Her voice was desperate, stripped of performance. "They're arresting him. They're taking him away. What am I supposed to do?" "You're supposed to protect your daughter," I said. That's what I'm trying." "No." I looked at Ivy, 7 years old now, confused and scared, watching her father being handcuffed in a church parking lot. "You tried to use her inheritance to save a man who was stealing from her. That's not protection. That's betrayal." Celeste's face crumpled. "I didn't know how bad." "You knew enough?" I knelt down to Ivy's level. "Sweetheart, can you wait with Pastor Vernon for a minute? I need to talk to your mom." Ivy nodded, lip trembling. Vernon appeared and gently guided her toward the church garden. I stood, faced my daughter. "The trust is locked," I said, irrevocably. "To Ivy. You have no access, no management rights, no control." "Dad, I'm her mother." "You're a woman who stood by while her husband tried to institutionalize her own father to steal from her child. The court will decide what kind of mother that makes you." "Please," she grabbed my arm. "I know I made mistakes, but I can fix this. I can—" "Supervised visitation only, through the court, with witnesses present. Those are my terms." "For how long?" "Until Ivy turns 18 and can decide for herself whether you deserve to be in her life." Celeste's legs buckled. She sank onto the church steps. Mascara running, the careful facade finally shattered completely. I walked away, found Ivy in the west garden with Vernon. "Grandpa," her small voice cut through everything. "Why is everyone so angry at Daddy?" I knelt down on the cold grass, my old knees protesting. "That's a complicated question, sweetheart. I promise I'll give you an honest answer when you're older. Right now, what you need to know is that you're safe. You're protected. And I love you." "Are you going away?" Tears in her eyes. "Mommy said you might go away." "I'm not going anywhere, I promised." She pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. "I drew this for you." I unfolded it. Crayon drawing, stick figures, our family written across the top in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. 3 figures, 1 tall with white hair me, 1 small with pigtails her, and 1 in the middle with a halo and wings labeled Mommy Rebecca in letters Ivy had clearly asked Vernon to help spell. Her parents weren't in the picture. Flashback hit me like lightning. St. Benedict's Hospital nursery, holding newborn Ivy while Rebecca watched from her wheelchair, cancer in remission, but both of us knowing it would come back. Making a promise to this tiny life that she would know safety and love. A promise that now required banishing her own parents to keep. "This is beautiful," I said, voice thick. "Can I keep it?" "It's for you," Ivy said. "So you remember we're family, just us and Grandma Rebecca watching from heaven." Vernon touched my shoulder gently. "I should take her inside. It's cold." I hugged Ivy tight. "I'll see you soon, sweetheart." "Promise?" "Promise." Vernon led her back toward the church. I stood alone in the garden, holding a child's drawing that showed more moral clarity than her parents had managed in their entire adult lives. 63 days until January 20th, the deadline when the trust would lock permanently. But Brent was in custody, Celeste was broken, and Ivy was protected. I walked to my truck phone buzzing. Text from Desmond. "Trust documents filed, notarized, Ivy protected. Well done." I was reaching for my keys when a woman in a different gray suit stepped from the shadows near my truck. "Mr. Prescott," badge in hand. "I'm Special Agent Catherine Ross, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We need to talk about your daughter's tax returns from 2019 to 2023, specifically unreported income and fraudulent deductions that may have funded criminal activity." I looked at her, at the badge, at the parking lot where federal agents were loading Brent into an unmarked sedan. Rebecca had built walls to protect Ivy from her parents, but the IRS was building a case that might take both of them down. The IRS investigation into Celeste's tax returns started that night in the church parking lot. 3 days later, I was still processing Agent Ross's questions about unreported income when the IRS agent's subpoena was still warm in my jacket pocket, and Desmond Thornton called with news that Brent just filed a countersuit, claiming I coerced him into signing documents under duress. "He's alleging elder abuse," Desmond said. "Claims you manipulated him with threats and false accusations. Wants the court to invalidate all property transfers and declare the trust structure void." "Can he do that?" "He can try. Court date is November 2nd. We'll be ready." November 2nd, 10:15 in the morning, state courtroom in Columbus with Judge Rebecca Hartwell presiding again. Brent sat at the plaintiff's table in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, flanked by his court-appointed attorney. Federal custody meant no bail. His face had the hollow desperation of a man watching his last play fail before he'd even made it. His attorney stood, young, overwhelmed, reading from notes. "Your Honor, my client was manipulated by a vengeful father-in-law into signing away his rights under extreme duress. Mr. Prescott used threats of legal action, public humiliation, and family estrangement to coerce Desmond stood without raising his voice. "Your Honor, the forensic handwriting analysis shows Mr. Lockwood forged his wife's signature on 6 separate loan applications over 3 years. He practiced Mr. Prescott's signature dozens of times with intent to commit fraud. The claim that he was coerced is contradicted by 3 years of documented criminal behavior. He presented the folder, Wayne's evidence, the practice sheets, the forged signatures, the timeline showing Brent had been planning fraud since 2020. Judge Hartwell reviewed the documents with the same careful attention she'd shown at the guardianship hearing. Mr. Lockwood, your claim of coercion is undermined by evidence of premeditated fraud. This court finds no merit in your petition to invalidate the trust structure." Brent's attorney tried again. "Your Honor, we request—" "I'm ordering a full lifestyle audit of both parents," Judge Hartwell interrupted, "and a mandatory assessment of the minor child's home environment by Child Protective Services. If these parents are unfit to provide a safe, stable home, this court will act in the child's best interest." Brent's face went white. The last thing he needed was CPS, discovering what his household really looked like. Desmond leaned over, whispered to me. "The IRS subpoena was coordinated. State investigators tipped them off 3 weeks ago about Celeste's tax fraud. This creates legal leverage for the custody case." "You planned this?" "Rebecca planned it. In her notes, she predicted they'd commit tax fraud to hide assets, told me to watch for it. We've been building the case since September. My wife had built a trap that extended beyond the grave into federal tax law. 18 days later, the rain came down like judgment. November 20th. 6:40 in the evening. I was leaving the Kroger parking lot when Celeste's car pulled up beside my truck, blocking me in. She got out in the downpour, no umbrella makeup already running. Dad, please, I need to talk to you. I rolled down my window. Make it quick. Can I sit in your truck? I'm getting soaked. I unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in, dripping water on the seat, shivering. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, voice breaking. Brent said it was the only way, to save our marriage, to give Ivy a stable home. He said if I didn't support him, he'd leave us with nothing. So you chose him. I chose what I thought was best for my daughter. You chose to let him try to institutionalize your own father, to steal from your child, to forge signatures and commit fraud. I kept my voice level, cold. You chose him over your daughter's safety. You chose his lies over your father's love. Rain hammered the truck roof so hard I could barely hear her sobs, but I could smell the expensive perfume she was still wearing, the same brand she'd posted about on social media. $180 a bottle, bought with fraud money while Ivy wore hand-me-downs from thrift stores. I didn't know how bad the gambling was, Celeste said. I didn't know about the offshore accounts or the forged signatures or... You knew enough, I said. You signed the guardianship petition. You staged the reconciliation event. You stood by while he called me a disgrace at your daughter's birthday. I was scared. Of what? Losing money, losing status, losing your social media brand. I gestured to her wrist. You're still wearing the bracelet he bought you. $4,200. I saw the receipt in Wayne's files. Purchased 3 days after he forged my signature on a loan application. She looked at the diamond bracelet, tried to take it off, couldn't get the clasp. I can change, she whispered. I can be better. I can put Ivy first. Just give me a chance to prove. I don't want your tears, I said. I don't want your promises. I want your actions. Prove you can put Ivy first. Prove you can prioritize her safety over your comfort. Until then, stay away from both of us. Dad, please. The court ordered supervised visitation, 1 hour per week, with a licensed social worker present. Those are the terms. Follow them or lose them. She stared at me, then opened the door and stepped back into the rain. I watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the downpour. My phone vibrated. Email from Child Protective Services. Subject: home assessment schedule, Lockwood residence. Mr. Prescott, as potential alternative guardian, your presence is requested at the home assessment scheduled for November 21st, 2023, 8 a.m. Please review the attached preliminary report. I opened the attachment. Preliminary findings, critical safety. Concern 1, evidence of financial instability affecting child's basic needs. Critical safety concern 2, inappropriate living conditions due to parental stress and conflict. Critical safety concern 3, signs of emotional neglect and inconsistent care. Recommendation: full investigation warranted. Alternative guardian placement should be considered. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I'd have to walk into my daughter's house and witness exactly how badly she'd failed her own child. The home assessment would force me to see what I'd been protecting Ivy from. The interrogation room smells like burnt coffee and desperation. And across the metal table, Brent Lockwood looks 20 years older than he did at Thanksgiving dinner 4 weeks ago. His orange jumpsuit hangs loose on a frame that's shed 20 pounds since his arrest. The fluorescent lights overhead hum like wasps trapped in glass. And Prosecutor Nadine Whitfield sits beside me with a manila folder thick enough to bury him. Mr. Lockwood, she says, her voice carrying the weight of 14 months of investigation. The state of Ohio has concluded its fraud investigation. We're prepared to file formal charges on 73 counts of wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud creditors. Brent's eyes flick to me, then away. The handcuffs rattle against the table when he shifts. 73 counts carry a maximum sentence of 15 years, Nadine continues. She opens the folder, slides a document across the metal surface. But I'm authorized to offer you a deal. 7 years and medium security eligibility for parole in 5 if you provide full testimony against your co-conspirators. I watch Brent's face, the man who screamed at me across Rebecca's dining room table, who called me a bitter old fool, who built an empire on forged signatures and stolen credit. He's calculating, not repenting, calculating. Who are the co-conspirators? His voice comes out hoarse like he hasn't spoken in days. Nadine pulls out 3 photographs, places them face up on the table. Celeste, Lionel Merrick from Grandeur Financial, Marcus Chen from the production company. Your wife coordinated the initial identity theft, Mr. Merrick facilitated the fraudulent loans. Mr. Chen created shell invoices for non-existent film projects. We have wire recordings, email chains, and bank transfer records tying all four of you together. Brent stares at Celeste's photograph. My daughter's face frozen in her driver's license photo from 2 years ago. She's smiling. Here's what they don't tell you about protecting your children. Sometimes the child you're protecting isn't the one sitting across from you. Like, what happens if I don't take the deal? Brent asks. 15 years, Nadine says flatly. And your wife faces separate charges as an accessory. The state will pursue guardianship termination for your daughter Ivy based on her unsafe living conditions. Mr. Prescott here will likely be awarded full custody. Brent's jaw tightens. For one brief moment, I think I see something human flicker across his face, fear maybe, or regret. Then it hardens into something uglier. I want immunity for Celeste, he says. Nadine doesn't blink. No. Then I want visitation rights with Ivy. Also no. Brent leans back in his chair, the metal legs scraping against concrete. He laughs, not a real laugh, but the sound a cornered animal makes before it bites. You people are unbelievable. You want me to burn for 7 years while my wife walks free. Your wife, I say quietly, has already confessed to her role. She came to me 3 weeks ago in the rain and admitted everything. That stops him. His eyes snap to mine, sharp and searching. Celeste wouldn't. She did. I lean forward, keeping my voice level. She told me about the forged documents, the shell companies, the production scheme. She said you convinced her it was a temporary loan, that you'd pay it all back before anyone noticed. Brent's face goes white, then red, then something worse than either empty. If I'm going under, he says slowly, she goes with me. Nadine's pen stops moving. Excuse me, Celeste wasn't an accessory. Brent's voice gains strength, venom seeping into every syllable. She was the brains, the forged signatures, her idea. She practiced my father-in-law's handwriting for 3 months before we hit the first bank. The offshore accounts. She set them up using her maiden name. The production invoices, she wrote every one. I feel something cold slide down my spine. Mr. Lockwood, Nadine warns, false accusations won't help your case. They're not false. Brent pulls a folded piece of paper from his jumpsuit pocket. How he got it past the guards, I don't know. He slides it across the table. That's a photocopy of Celeste's handwriting practice sheets. She left them in our home office safe. The combination's on the back. Nadine unfolds the paper. Her eyes scan the contents, and I watch her professional mask slip just slightly. Where's the original? She asks. My attorney has it, along with 18 other documents proving Celeste orchestrated this entire scheme. Brent looks at me. Now really looks at me, and there's nothing human left in his eyes. I was weak. I was greedy. But she was the mastermind, and I'll testify to that in open court if you force me to trial. The door opens. Wayne Kendrick steps inside, and in his hands is a document I don't recognize. Got the records you requested, ma'am, he says to Nadine. Then to me, you're going to want to see this. He spreads the papers on the table. Jail visitation logs. Brent Lockwood's name at the top, dates running from November 21st through December 4th. 17 entries. Every visitor's name is Celeste Lockwood. 17 visits, Wayne Kendrick says. Not once did she ask the guards about Ivy. Not once did she request a call to check on her daughter. Every visit, same question. What are you telling them? All these business being one to be barred. I stare at the logs until the names blur together. Brent smiles. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Nadine closes her folder. We'll be in touch, Mr. Lockwood. Don't leave town. I'm in jail, he says. Where would I go? Outside, the December cold hits like a fist. I'm halfway to my truck when I see her Celeste standing by the driver's door, her phone in her hand. Her face is white. Dad, she whispers, holding up the phone. The screen shows a text from Brent's number. I told them you were the brains. Run. 2 unmarked police vehicles turn into the parking lot, lights off, moving slow. Celeste looks at me. What did you do? Celeste's signature trembles on the behavioral agreement line, and I realize this is the closest thing to surrender my daughter will ever give me. Not love, not apology, just legal compliance bought with the threat of losing Ivy forever. 13 days ago, those unmarked vehicles circled us in the parking lot. Celeste tried to run, made it 3 steps before Nadine stepped out and said, Mrs. Lockwood, we can do this easy or hard. My daughter chose easy, hands behind her back. No tears, just that empty look she's worn since 16. They didn't arrest her, offered the same deal they had offered Brent: testify, cooperate, or face 15 years. Now, it's December 18th, 2 days before the legal deadline, and we're in a notary office that smells like old paper and lemon polish. Desmond Thornton has spread 14 pages across the table. Celeste sits across from me in the gray sweater she wore to Rebecca's funeral. Ivy colors in the corner, a house with no people in it. Celeste. Desmond says, "You understand these terms are non-negotiable. One violation, one failed test, and you lose all visitation rights until Ivy turns 18. Sign here." My daughter stares at the line. Her hand hovers. "Where do I sign?" Her voice comes out hollow. Desmond points to 4 pages. Celeste signs without reading. I watch her hand, the same hand that forged my signature 17 times, that cashed checks meant for Ivy's future, that held our granddaughter only when cameras watched. "This trust means Ivy will never be homeless," I say. "Never be used as leverage, never be sold for someone else's comfort. Your mother would have demanded this from me." Celeste's pen stops. For 1 second, something cracks in her face. Then it smooths back to blankness. Desmond slides the final document across. The irrevocable trust, protecting $1,847,000, every penny Rebecca left, now locked away until Ivy turns 25 or graduates college. "Your ex-husband has fled," Desmond says. "Missed his arraignment yesterday. There's a warrant in 3 states. Celeste's hand tightens. "Brent wouldn't. He crossed into Kentucky 2 days ago, abandoned his attorney, his plea negotiations, left you to face charges alone." The notary stamps each page, solid thuds like coffin nails. Desmond leans closer, voice low. 3 days ago, Celeste contacted Brent's defense attorney, offered to testify that you coerced her into the fraud. Said you threatened to take Ivy unless she helped forge documents. She was willing to put you in prison to reduce Brent's sentence." The words hit like a fist, but I don't let my face move. "The attorney declined," Desmond adds. "Too much evidence proving otherwise. But her loyalty to him persists even as he abandons her." I look at my daughter. She's watching Ivy color something in her eyes. I can't name longing, maybe, or the ghost of maternal instinct she never learned. "Mommy has to follow rules now, baby," Celeste says to Ivy, voice cracking. "Grandpa's gonna help us." Ivy doesn't look up. "Daddy doesn't follow rules. That's why he left." The notary's stamp hits the trust document like a judge's gavel, final, absolute, irreversible, and for the first time in 8 months, I can breathe without my chest collapsing inward. 6 days later, Christmas Eve, I perform a ceremony I've been planning since Rebecca died. The farmhouse smells like pine and cinnamon. Ivy sits on the floor in her red velvet dress, a gift from Wayne's wife, since Celeste hasn't bought her daughter new clothes in 7 months. Afternoon light slants through windows, turning dust into golden snow. I carry the wooden box from my bedroom, Rebecca's antique jewelry box, hand-carved mahogany with roses etched into the lid. My wife touched those roses every morning like a prayer. I kneel beside Ivy and place the box in her hands. "This belonged to Grandma Rebecca," I say. "She told me to give it to the strongest person in our family when the time was right. That's you, Ivy. You're the strongest of all of us." Ivy's eyes go wide. "Is it full of treasure?" "No, sweetheart. It's full of something better, proof that you matter, that you're protected, that nobody can ever take your safety away again." I watch Ivy trace her fingers over the carved roses on the box lid, the same roses Rebecca touched every morning when she kept her wedding ring inside, and I wonder if my late wife somehow knew this little girl would need protection from her own parents. Ivy opens the latch slowly, carefully. Inside, nestled in red velvet, is a sealed envelope. The handwriting makes my throat close. "To the grandchild I'll never meet." Rebecca's handwriting, written 3 weeks before she died. "What does it say, Grandpa?" My hands shake opening it. 2 pages Rebecca's careful script. I read the first paragraph silently. "If you're reading this, it means Celeste, or whoever she married, has hurt you. I knew it would happen. I saw it in my daughter's eyes years ago. The capacity to love only when it costs her nothing. Harlan will protect you. He's the only one who knows how to love without conditions. Trust him. He will sacrifice everything to keep you safe." Ivy looks up at me, her 6-year-old face too serious for Christmas Eve. She's quiet for a long moment, holding the box against her chest. Then she asks the question that breaks my heart clean in half. "Grandpa, will Mommy ever hold me for real now, like she used to before Daddy got mad all the time? Or will she only hug me when people are watching? I open my mouth to answer, but my phone rings. Nadine Whitfield's name appears text preview, reading Brent Lockwood apprehended at Canadian border. Extradition hearing set for January 3rd. Celeste's cooperation required call immediately. Ivy's small voice cuts through the ringing. Grandpa, what does sacrifice mean? Grandma Rebecca's letter says it a lot. Judge Martinez's gavel falls on December 29th at exactly 3:47 p.m., and in that single crack of wood on wood, Brent Lockwood's entire constructed life shatters into legal fragments that will take 15 years to pay back. 5 days ago, I answered Ivy's question about sacrifice. It means loving someone enough to give up what you want so they can have what they need. She'd held Rebecca's letter and nodded like she understood. Now I sit beside Desmond Thornton, watching Brent stand before Judge Elena Martinez, a silver-haired woman in her early 60s whose reputation for protecting children has made her a legend in family court. Celeste sits 3 rows ahead, hands folded. Mr. Lockwood. Judge Martinez says, your actions endangered a child, defrauded investors, and weaponized your own family. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison with full asset forfeiture and restitution orders totaling $847,000. This court prioritizes the child's safety above all else. Brent's face goes white. Then he attacks. Your Honor, you don't understand. This was orchestrated by him. He points at me. Harlan Prescott set this up from the beginning. He was jealous of my success, jealous that Celeste chose me. Mr. Lockwood, I suggest you stop talking. He forged those documents himself. He planted evidence. He turned my wife against me. Autour. Judge Martinez opens a folder. Mr. Lockwood, Mr. Prescott provided this court with 47 minutes of recorded conversations. Your own voice threatening to burn everyone, if caught. Your own voice admitting to forging signatures. Your own voice calling your daughter collateral damage. I've heard enough. Brent's mouth opens. Nothing comes out. The bailiff leads him away. He doesn't look at Celeste, doesn't ask about Ivy, just goes. Outside, Nadine Whitfield pulls Celeste aside. I stand close enough to hear. Your cooperation reduced your exposure to probation and mandatory counseling, Nadine says. But you will never control that trust. Your daughter's inheritance is beyond your reach until she turns 25. Celeste nods. No tears, no performance. Then she turns to me. We stand in the courthouse hallway. Dad, she says quietly, I know I don't deserve it, but can we try one small step at a time? For Ivy. I look at my daughter, the gray in her hair that wasn't there a year ago, the lines around her eyes, the tremor in her hands. Steps earn trust, I say. Show me the steps. The next afternoon, I sit in my truck outside Ivy's school playground. Celeste arrives exactly on time. The court monitor notes it. Ivy runs to the swings. Then something happens I didn't expect. Celeste pulls out her phone. My chest tightens. But she doesn't open the camera. She powers it down completely, sets it on the bench, kneels in the wood chips, and pulls Ivy into a long, genuine embrace. No angles, no lighting, no audience. Mommy, you're not taking pictures, Ivy's voice carries. Celeste's voice breaks. No baby. This is just for us. Just you and me. Okay, can we stay like this a little longer? As long as you want, sweetheart. Watching Celeste hold Ivy without a phone in her hand, is this real change or just another performance refined by consequence? Ivy spots me. Her face lights up. She runs over, pulling at the door. Grandpa, come play with us. I hesitate. You're with your mama right now, sweetheart. But I want you both. Please. Celeste walks over, meets my eyes. Something in her face looks different, softer, or just exhausted enough to stop pretending. She's right, Celeste says. She deserves both of us, if you're willing. For her, I say, opening the door. Always for her. New Year's Eve arrives quiet and cold. 5 minutes before midnight, Ivy and I sit in my living room. The wooden box rests on the main shelf where Rebecca's photo once stood alone. Now they share the space. Ivy traces the carved roses while distant fireworks pop across the neighborhood. The smell of wood smoke drifts through the window, mixing with cinnamon tea, cooling on the table. Grandpa, why is Grandma's box the most important thing in the house? I pull her closer. Because it reminds us that love isn't about money or houses. It's about keeping the people we love safe, even when it costs us everything. Did it cost you a lot to keep me safe? It cost me some things I had to let go. but keeping you safe was worth more than all of it combined. The wooden box catches the colored light from distant fireworks, red, gold, blue, and I remember Rebecca polishing it every Sunday morning, never knowing it would one day protect the granddaughter she never lived to meet. Ivy opens the latch. Inside, nestled with Rebecca's letter, are pages covered in crayon. "What's this, sweetheart?" "My journal," Ivy says proudly. "I've been writing down all the days Grandpa kept me safe. See, December 5th, Grandpa came to the police place. December 18th, Grandpa made the trust. December 24th, Grandpa gave me Grandma's box." My throat closes. The box isn't just a symbol, it's a chronicle. Protection documented across generations by the child it was meant to shield. Midnight strikes, fireworks explode overhead. Ivy closes the box, carefully holds it against her chest. Then she looks up at me with those serious brown eyes, Rebecca's eyes, and asks, "Grandpa, next year, will you teach me how to protect people like you protected me?" And I realize the inheritance isn't just money or boundaries. It's the wisdom to stand firm when the people you love need a shield more than they need your approval. The courage to say no when yes would destroy them. The strength to be the wall between innocence and harm, even when that wall makes you the villain in someone else's story. "Yes," I tell her, "I'll teach you everything I know." Outside, the new year begins. Inside, 3 generations rest on a single shelf, Rebecca's photograph, the wooden box, and a child's crayon chronicle of the day's love meant choosing protection over popularity. The box was never worthless. We just needed the right story to reveal its worth. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Protecting the ones you love isn't always pretty, but it's always worth it. I spent months questioning myself. Should I have confronted them sooner? Should I have given Celeste more chances before involving lawyers? The truth is, I made mistakes along the way. I waited too long to act decisively. I gave too many second chances when Ivy's safety should have been my only priority. Don't make my mistake when someone shows you who they really are, especially when a child is at risk. Believe them the first time. What I learned through this whole ordeal is that real love sometimes looks like setting boundaries that hurt. Sometimes it means being called the villain, so an innocent child can grow up safe. This dad's journey through family revenge, not the vindictive kind, but the kind that strategically protects, taught me that documentation, patience, and unwavering resolve matter more than anger. A father's calm revenge isn't about retaliation. It's about being the shield when your own family becomes the threat. I believe God brought me through this trial for a reason, so Ivy would have one person willing to stand firm when everyone else looked away. If this story about a dad's family revenge, the protective kind, resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to protect family from family? What would you have done in my position? And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Dad's Calm Revenge for more stories about standing firm when it matters most. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time and attention mean more than you know. One final reminder, while this story contains fictionalized elements for privacy and storytelling purposes, the core message about protecting those who can't protect themselves remains absolutely real.